Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere cold, like bone-chilling, soul-freezing, and you probably won't survive this cold. Welcome to the depths of a medieval European winter, where the fire burns low, the snow piles high, and your odds of making it to spring hover somewhere between slim and please don't get sick. You're a villager in the year 1314, living in a thatch-roofed cottage on the edge of a sleepy hamlet. You don't have electricity, central heating, or even mittens. What you do have is grit. And turnips. So many turnips. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'm curious. What time is it where you are and what city are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first frost comes earlier than expected this year, catching even the wisest old shepherd off guard. By All Saints' Day, the air is already slicing through your homespun tunic, and your breath fogs out like a little ghost every time you exhale. You've seen harsh winters before, but something about this one feels sharper, colder, like the sun has forgotten your village exists. Your cottage sits along the muddy edge of a cart-rutted road, framed by the dark skeletons of once lush trees. The thatch roof leaks a little near the chimney, just enough to remind you that it's going to be a long, damp season. Inside, your family of 6, plus 2 goats and a chicken who thinks she's a cat, is crammed into one smoky room, huddling around the hearth. The fire is small, you're rationing wood already, and every crack in the wall is stuffed with straw and cloth to block out the merciless wind. The daily routine slows to a crawl. Daylight barely sticks around for 8 hours, and it's a grey, washed-out kind of light that makes everything look like it's already halfway dead. You wake up cold, work cold, and go to sleep cold. But survival in winter isn't just about braving the cold, it's about anticipating it, preparing for it, outsmarting it, and frankly, hoping it gets bored and moves on. The village isn't big, maybe 30 families at a total, but when it comes to winter prep, everyone's in sync like a grumbling, frostbitten orchestra. Over the past few weeks, you've watched your neighbours patch up their roofs, dig out ditches to divert meltwater, and drive livestock into shared barns. That one guy, Osric, has already started grumbling about the year of the deep freeze, and every time he tells the tale, the winter gets longer and the snow gets taller. Last time, he said it snowed so much the priest had to tunnel his way to Mass. Your own family has done what it can. The root cellar is full, mostly beets, carrots, turnips and onions, all nestled in sawdust and straw. You've salted and smoked whatever meat you managed to get. A pig that was too stubborn to breed, 3 rabbits and half a goose. You shared the other half with the tanner's widow who swears it cured her foot fungus. Barrels of ale are tucked in the corner, not because they'll stay warm, but because they're morale, and you're going to need morale. Still, there's this creeping anxiety you can't quite shake. Every year, the weather shifts just a little. Some winters are mild, others merciless, but this one already feels like a beast. The ground froze solid before you finished turning the last of the manure into the soil. The wind keeps blowing from the north, sharp and steady, and the animals are restless. The cow keeps mooing at odd hours, like she's arguing with ghosts. One historical fact to file away here. The winter of 1315 to 1317, known later as part of the Great Famine, was one of the worst on record in medieval Europe. It rained, then snowed, then rained some more. Crops failed. Entire harvests washed away. Food became so scarce that people were accused of grave robbing, not for jewellery but for meat. So yeah, you're right to be nervous. But here's a quirky little detail. Some villagers believed that hanging a piece of iron over the door would ward off evil winter spirits. Others swore by onion garlands. The weirder the arrangement, the stronger the magic. Your neighbour's house looks like a vegetable-themed horror show, but she swears her kids haven't had chilblains in 3 years. Worth noting. And still, there's debate even among your village elders about what exactly causes these bad winters. Some think it's divine punishment, too much sinning, not enough fasting. Others blame witches, or the stars, or that weird smoke the Smith's Forge has been coughing up lately. But one elder, the nearly toothless Brother Cadwell, whispers a more unsettling theory. The earth itself is a shifting, tired of holding us. You try not to think about that one, when the wind moans through the rafters like it's saying your name. Tonight, as the temperature plunges past what's reasonable, you press closer to the fire, wrapping a rough woolen blanket around your shoulders. Your feet feel like stones. Someone offers you a cup of warm ale and you sip it slowly, grateful for the temporary heat. Outside, the frost paints delicate stars on the window glass, tiny frozen constellations. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many of you will still be here when the frost finally retreats. The cold isn't your biggest fear. Hunger is. Cold just slows you down, makes your fingers clumsy and your joints ache. But hunger unravels you. And that's why the months leading up to winter are frantic in a way nothing else in your year quite is. You've been stockpiling like your life depends on it. Because, well, it does. In autumn, your entire village turns into a machine built for storage. Every hand, from toddler to toothless, is part of it. The kids help pluck the last of the beans and apples, the men slaughter pigs and deer, the women peel, salt, stew and dry like there's no tomorrow. The air reeks of smoke, vinegar, blood and earth. It's a strangely comforting mix. You learn to associate that scent with safety, survival. Let's start with salt, the unsung hero of your winter prep. Salt is expensive, sacred and almost magical in its power to preserve. You use it to cure pork, beef and fish, rubbing it deep into the flesh and hanging it in cool, dark places. Cellars, barns, sometimes your own rafters. You don't waste an ounce. If you run out before the last pig's been processed, that's it. No do-overs. And heaven help you if some rodent gets into your stockpile. Right now, in the corner of your house, there's a barrel packed with salted pork. You dream about it. You obsessively count the days and servings in your head, imagining how long it might last if no one gets sick. If the winter doesn't stretch into a cruel April, if the rats stay out. And even if the pork lasts, you know the taste will wear you down. After the 50th night of pork stew with dried leeks, you'd trade a finger for a fresh apple. Root vegetables are your other salvation. They're packed in crates and barrels layered with straw or sand to keep them from rotting. Carrots, parsnips, onions, turnips. You've never loved them, but you've learned to respect them. Beets especially seem unkillable. They'll outlast you, your cow, and possibly the concept of joy. But when you're hungry enough, a roasted beet feels like a feast. There's also grain, if you're lucky. Oats, rye. Maybe a sack of barley tucked somewhere behind the drying herbs. Bread is a luxury now, made less and less often as flour becomes precious. You stretch it with peas or beans. Or grind up acorns if things get really dire. The bread gets dense, bitter, and hard enough to chip a tooth, but it fills your stomach, barely. And then there's the problem of keeping it all safe. The cellar is cold, damp, and not entirely secure. You've had to fight off mould, rats, and once, a raccoon that no one knew existed in your part of the world. You tried to make it a pet for 5 minutes, until it bit your cousin, and ran off with a string of sausages. Speaking of sausages, your uncle swore by smoking meat until it was drier than a bishop's sermon. The family joke is that you could beat someone to death with one of his smoked hams, but hey, they're still edible. Technically. A historical tidbit worth whispering here. In the Middle Ages, winter preparation wasn't just about food, it was about demonstrating your moral worth. Poor storage, wastefulness, or lack of discipline could be seen as a spiritual failing. God helps those who help themselves, they said. But if your roof leaked or your root cellar flooded, you might start wondering if he just forgot about you entirely. A quirky fact to chew on, literally. Villagers sometimes chewed on strips of rawhide or old leather when things got desperate. Boiled boots weren't just a metaphor. The joke goes that you could suck on a belt long enough to convince yourself it was soup. Hopefully you'll never reach that point. But let's not pretend you didn't make mistakes this year. You meant to salt one more pig, but it died early from some mysterious illness that bloated its belly and turned its eyes milky. You didn't trust the meat, and burying it was an awful, muddy, ominous chore. It was your fattest pig. Your brother tried to be optimistic. Maybe it would have gone bad in the cellar anyway. But no one really believes that. It was just bad luck. Or maybe a bad omen. You've been sleeping uneasily ever since. And here's where debate comes in. Every year there's some argument in the village about the best way to store food. Dry it, salt it, smoke it, pickle it. One elder insists vinegar ruins everything. Another says if you don't smoke meat long enough, you'll get winter belly, a charming term for food poisoning that strikes around mid-February. Even your grandmother, who's survived more winters than anyone else alive, changes her opinion every season. The wind's different this year, she mutters, stirring a cauldron of bubbling plum jam that no one really asked for. Still, you trust her. Everyone does. If she says the salted fish needs another day on the rack, it stays on the rack. As the days shrink and the air grows sharp enough to flay your cheeks, you start making mental lists at night. What you have, what you need, what might go bad, what could last. It becomes obsessive. You stare at the rafters and imagine rows of smoked lynx. You whisper silent prayers to St. Bridget to protect your stores. You make deals in your head. If the cheese doesn't mould, I'll go to mass every day. If the oat bin doesn't run dry, I'll confess about that thing with the blacksmith's daughter. Maybe. Winter prep in the Middle Ages wasn't a game. It was chess, played months in advance, and the pieces didn't always do what you wanted. Tonight, as snow starts to drift in lazy spirals outside the shuttered window, you settle beside the fire. The tang of smoke and drying herbs in your nose. Someone is carving a chunk from a wheel of hard cheese, and you all eye it like wolves. You'll need to make it last until Lent, maybe longer. The wind howls through the cracks in the doorframe. Your dog, a lumpy one-eyed mutt, shifts closer to your side and grumbles in his sleep. Outside you hear the faint, eerie snap of a frozen tree limb giving way under the weight of snow. One less tree for firewood. You try not to think about it too much. After all, you've done everything you could. Probably. Your clothes are your armour now, not against battle or brigands, but against the kind of cold that slips in behind your ribs and tries to make a home there. Dressing for winter isn't fashion, it's survival strategy. You don't have Gore-Tex or fleece. No waterproof. No thermal socks. What you have is wool, so much wool it's scratchy, heavy and smells vaguely of sheep when it gets damp, which is often, but it's warm, and in a winter like this one, that's what matters. You start with a linen undertunic, thin and soft, already patched at the elbows. Over that goes a thicker wool tunic, coarse, stained from years of wear, but sturdy. You belt it at the waist to keep the heat in and the wind out. On your legs, thick hose, wool again, and then, if you're lucky or rich, you're neither, maybe leather breeches or a second pair layered underneath. Your feet are the real problem. You've got shoes made of leather, hand-stitched by your cousin who's decent at it but not exactly a master cobbler. They are stiff, the seams leak, and the soles are already worn thin. You stuff them with straw and rags, not because it helps much, but because it makes you feel like you're doing something. Then the outerwear, a cloak, heavy, hooded and woolen again, gets draped around your shoulders. It smells of smoke and last season's mutton, but when the wind howls and snow stings your face, you clutch it like a lifeline. Gloves, you wish. Most villagers make do with long sleeves and quick hands, but on truly bitter mornings you'll see folks wrapping their hands in scraps of cloth or wearing fingerless mittens knit by a grandmother who counts every stitch like it's a prayer. At night, you don't undress. There's no romantic slipping into night clothes. You climb under layers of blankets, if you're lucky, fur, and keep everything on. You sleep in your clothes, your socks, sometimes even your cloak, because getting warm again once you've let the cold in is nearly impossible. Your breath fogs the air with each exhale. Sometimes you wake in the morning with frost on your eyebrows. You brush it off and pretend it's normal, because it is. One solid historical fact for you. Medieval villagers didn't bathe often in winter. It wasn't just laziness or fear of demons in water. Getting wet could kill you. No one wanted pneumonia, and no one had a spare change of clothes just lying around. Water had to be heated over the fire, carefully rationed, and the whole washing process became a calculated risk. Some families washed once a month, others just wiped down with a damp cloth and called it good. Smell was democratic, everyone stank, so no one cared. But here's a fringe detail most people don't know. Sleeping naked under layers of fur with someone else was considered warmer than sleeping clothed. Some healers swore by it. Not for romance, mind you, just warmth. It was called skin-to-skin sharing. Sometimes siblings, parents, or even friends would do it during the worst parts of the winter. You're not quite there yet. Give it another few weeks. Your grandmother, always the source of either wisdom or doom, claims that in her youth she survived a winter so cold that her cousin's nose froze in his sleep and snapped clean off when he rubbed it. You don't ask questions, you just nod and add another log to the fire. She also claims that sleeping with your head to the north invites spirits to drag away your dreams. You try to sleep facing east now, just in case. The older generation has other tricks too. Heated stones wrapped in cloth and tucked into beds. Greased wool stuffed in cracks in the wall. A pot of boiling water left on the hearth for steam. Anything to trick the cold into leaving you alone for a few hours. The kids play games where they pretend the floor is lava. Because in truth, it might as well be. It steals the warmth from your feet instantly. That's why you sleep raised if you can. A straw mattress on wooden slats or even a pile of sacks can make the difference between frostbite and just mild misery. There's some debate among the villagers about furs. Some say fox fur is cursed, that the animal's spirit lingers and brings nightmares. Others say wolf pelts are the warmest, but only if the beast was killed in the light of a full moon. You personally think both ideas are ridiculous, but then again, your cousin swears he heard the wolf pelt in the smithy's house whispering once. And he hasn't slept well since. The cold changes how people move, how they speak. You notice it in your neighbours' bodies. The way everyone hunches, pulls their sleeves over their hands, keeps their mouths tight to avoid letting the chill in. People walk slower, not out of laziness, but because the ground is treacherous. Ice forms even where you're sure there's no moisture. A twisted ankle in December is a death sentence if it means you can't chop wood or fetch water. And yet, in some odd way, winter brings people closer. Literally. You crowd together for warmth, for companionship, for the kind of shared complaining that makes hardship feel a little less unbearable. Your cottage feels smaller, yes, but also more alive. You hear your sister singing under her breath while she spins wool. You see your brother and father leaning shoulder to shoulder as they carve new wooden spoons by candlelight. You smell bread baking on a rare, fortunate morning when the grain stores allow it. And for a moment, you forget that your breath is visible. On nights when the wind isn't howling and the fire hasn't gone out, you sometimes step outside, just for a minute. You wrap your cloak tight and look up. The sky is clear, brutally bright with stars that seem sharper than summer stars. The moon is like a shard of ice. The world is utterly still, no crickets, no birds, no rustling leaves, just snow and silence. It's breathtaking. It's terrifying. And it's beautiful. You know the cold isn't done with you yet. In fact, the worst is still to come. But tonight, wrapped in every scrap of fabric you own, curled under a thick blanket that smells of goat and wood smoke, you find sleep anyway. It comes slowly, like thawing fingers, but it comes, and that's enough. The fire is more than warmth. It's the centre of your universe right now, the heart of the house, the rhythm of your day, and honestly, your only real hope of staying alive. Without it, the walls mean nothing, the food won't cook, and your fingers will freeze stiff before you've even finished complaining about how cold they are. It's not just a fire, it's the fire. The hearth. You wake up with your back curved around its fading glow. Your first thought isn't good morning, it's did the fire die? You reach out to put a tentative hand, hoping for even a ghost of heat. If the embers are still alive, you can coax them. If they're not, you'll spend the next hour with numb hands, hunched over the kindling, praying the flint strikes true. Sometimes you cheat and toss a handful of dried moss into the ashes just to give it a little kick. It smells like scorched earth and desperation. The fire has its own personality. It hisses when you feed it damp wood. It cracks and spits when the wind tries to sneak in through the chimney. It sulks after rain and roars when it gets too hot, threatening to take the whole house with it. You've seen it leap unexpectedly, catching the edge of someone's sleeve or a pile of straw too close to the hearth. You still remember the panic last winter, when the cooper's roof caught fire and the entire village ran, barefoot in the snow, to form a frantic bucket line from the frozen stream. The fire won that one. The cooper moved in with the priest for 3 months, and let's just say they got very familiar with each other's snoring habits. Everyone in the house knows their job with the fire. You keep a stack of kindling in the corner, dry if you're lucky. The younger kids fetch twigs from the woodshed. The older ones break ice from the well to keep a pot of water simmering nearby. Because dry air leads to cracked lips and bloody noses, you stir the coals. Your mother blows gently at the base to wake the flames like some sort of fire whisperer. Your father claims to know when the wood is ready just by the smell, which is probably nonsense. But no one argues with him. Not about the fire. One historical fact that might surprise you. In medieval villages, it was common for a family to keep a fire going continuously for months, even in years. Letting it go out was more than inconvenient. It could be catastrophic. Flint and steel were slow and unreliable. If your hearth went cold, you'd have to beg a coal from a neighbour. Or worse, walk to the next village with a smoking pot cradled under your cloak. Fire was so precious that people sometimes carried embers in covered lanterns when travelling just to be sure they could relight it at the next stop. No pressure. There's also a lingering superstition about fire. Some say it's alive. Not metaphorically, actually alive. That it watches you, judges you. There are rules. Don't spit into the fire or it'll remember. Don't let it go out on a feast day or you'll invite famine. And whatever you do, don't sleep with your feet pointed directly at it. The old women say that's how you lose your soul in the night. A strange fringe belief still floats around your village, that fire has moods. The blacksmith swears his forge burns brighter when his wife's in a bad mood. A travelling midwife once told you that blue flames mean a spirit's nearby, and if the fire flickers when no wind's blowing, someone in the room is lying. That made for a very awkward dinner conversation. Your uncle still insists he was telling the truth about where the cheese went. The fire's also your cook, your stove, your baker, your brewer. You eat what it allows. In the morning it gives you thin porridge and weak tea. At night it simmers pottage, thick stew made from yesterday's stew, and the day before that, and probably something from last harvest if we're being honest. It's a bubbling mystery cauldron, and everyone pretends not to notice the texture has become suspiciously meaty. No one's seen the rooster in a while. On rare days when you've earned a celebration, or when someone needs cheering up, you might bake flatbread on a hot stone or roast chestnuts in a little iron pan. The smell fills the whole room and makes even the grumpiest aunt crack a smile. You remember once, years ago, when someone managed to bake an actual apple pie. People still talk about it like it was a holy relic. But the fire's not all cosy and charming. Sometimes it's cruel and makes the house smoky and your eyes sting. Your throat is constantly dry. The ceiling is black with soot. The baby has a cough that won't go away, and everyone suspects the fire's to blame, but what are you going to do? Put it out? Freeze? No, you just cough with him and hope it's nothing worse. And that's the thing, there's debate even among healers about what the fire does to the body. Some say it keeps illness away, dries out the dampness that breeds plague. Others claim it poisons the air slowly, weakening your lungs all winter. The church, predictably, says the fire is a metaphor, a test of endurance, a symbol of a divine light. You think maybe it's just fire, necessary, dangerous, comforting, capricious. Still, when the fire burns low and the wind outside that makes the walls creak, it becomes a kind of friend. You sit close, you watch the flames twist and dance, hypnotic and alive. Someone tells a story, usually a ghost story, because what else fits this kind of night? You wrap your cloak tighter, sip your weak ale, and listen. The fire crackles at the punchlines. Sometimes it almost seems to laugh. At bedtime, you bank it carefully, piling ash over the coals so they smoulder until morning. You say a little prayer out loud or just in your head. Everyone does. You can't risk it going out, not tonight, not any night. You lay down beside it, eyes heavy, breath misting the air above you. The flames settle into a low orange glow. The shadows climb the walls like silent watchers. And even though the wind moans outside and the roof groans like it's thinking about collapse, you feel a little safer, knowing the fire's still breathing beside you. For now, you eat the same thing every day. Not because you like it, not because it's comforting, but because there's no other choice. By midwinter, your meals aren't about flavour or variety, they're about function. Food is medicine, insulation and morale all rolled into the one bowl. And most of the time that bowl contains some variant of pottage. Pottage is your winter staple. You make it in the same cauldron every day, never fully cleaning it out. Just topping it off with whatever scraps, dried herbs or root vegetables you have left. It's thick, earthy, vaguely brownish, and smells like a mix between boiled wood and onions that have seen better days. You pretend not to notice the occasional lump of something unidentifiable. Is that turnip or meat? Hopefully turnip. Meat is rare, and if it is mung meat, you start doing math in your head about what might have gone missing. You stir it slowly, letting the fire do its work and maybe toss in a debone from last week's feast, more for flavour than nutrition. If you're lucky, there's still some marrow in there. That's the good part, the part that feels like a real treat. A rare hit of fat in a season where everything is lean, tight and dry. Your bread, if you have any left, is a slab of rye or oat baked hard and dark. It could probably be used as a weapon if needed. Sometimes you soak it in broth just to soften it enough to chew. Other times you pretend the crunch is satisfying. No one is fooled. You've broken a tooth before on bread, that's just how it goes. But the worst days aren't the ones with bad food, they're the ones with none. The days when the pot is almost empty and you scrape at the sides, pretending the burn at the bottom is just the good stuff. You've seen your father drink boiled onion water and call it soup. Your grandmother once served hot ale with pepper as dinner. There are no complaints. Hunger doesn't leave room for them. Now when there is meat, real, honest-to-God meat, it's cause for a little celebration. A rabbit caught in a snare, a pigeon knocked down with a lucky throw, or on a miracle day a slice of salted pork brought out from the back of the cellar like it's a holy relic. You treat it with reverence, you don't devour it, you savour. You divide it into laughably small pieces, eat slowly, and lick the grease off your fingers like it's your last joy on earth. Here's a historical fact that sounds bleak, because it is. Many medieval peasants got most of their winter calories from pottage, ale, and hard bread. Meat was rare, dairy was a luxury, and fresh greens, forget it. Scurvy wasn't diagnosed yet, but people absolutely suffered from it, and they blamed it on the humours, or maybe a sin they forgot to confess. Your family, like others, has its own weird food tricks. Your aunt insists on adding dried nettles to every meal for blood warmth. Your brother likes to chew garlic raw, which makes him smell like the inside of a boot, but keeps the others at a respectful distance. And your cousin, never to be trusted, once swore that sprinkling powdered eggshell into pottage kept your bones strong. You tried it. It was like sipping hot gravel. Never again. Now for something truly quirky. Some villagers believe that certain foods take on spiritual energy during winter. Bone broth in particular is seen as not just nourishing but protective. You don't just boil bones for soup, you boil them for luck. The longer they simmer, the more strength they supposedly pass on to you. People chant little blessings over the pot, stir it clockwise only. Drop a coin in if someone's sick. You don't know if it works, but when your sister got the fever last year, you dropped in 2 coins and stirred for hours. She recovered, so maybe it's not nonsense after all. Of course, there are arguments in the village about what's proper food during winter. The priest frowns on excess, no surprise there. He says fasting sharpens the soul, easy for him to say. He's got access to the monastery stores. Others say you should eat fat now as much as you can to keep warm. There's a quiet battle between the old ways and the church's rules. Feast days, fasting days, forbidden meats. Keeping track is half the work of surviving. You just want to eat without guilt, but that's never really an option. By now, your body has adjusted, sort of. You're always a little hungry, but not in the gnawing, desperate way you were in early December. Now it's just a dull ache. A constant emptiness you've made peace with. You don't expect to feel full, you just hope not to feel dizzy. You start choosing your chores based on how much energy they'll take. Carrying firewood? Sure. Walking to the stream and back with 2 buckets? Only if you've eaten something more than broth that day. Mealtimes have become quiet rituals. No one talks much while eating. You all just listen to the fire pop and the spoons scrape against wooden bowls. Once in a while, someone burps and it feels like comic relief. You glance around the table, make brief eye contact, and the smallest smirk appears. It's not much, but it's a moment. The younger kids still ask for honey sometimes. You haven't seen honey in months. The last of it went into a tonic when your neighbour gave birth in the cold of January. You think about telling them stories of summer fruit, roasted apples, sweet pies, but it feels cruel. Better to let them forget what they're missing until spring arrives, if it arrives. You remember a feast once, years ago, when a neighbouring village butchered a massive ox and shared it across 3 parishes. People brought turnip cakes, soft cheese, honeyed ale. It felt like heaven. You wonder if you only imagined it. The way hunger plays tricks on your memory is something no one talks about, but you suspect it's happening to everyone. Tonight the pottage is thinner than usual. The bread is crumbled into it like gravel, the salt is nearly gone so it tastes like warm water and regret. But there's still heat, there's still a spoon, there's still food, if only barely. You eat slowly, scrape the bowl clean and rinse it in snow. Tomorrow you'll eat again, hopefully. The thing is, even in the worst winters, even when your belly growls and the fire smokes, and you think your toes might be plotting an exit, you celebrate. Because not doing so feels like giving up. Midwinter arrives like a long exhale, somewhere between the last daylight of December and the grimmest hunger days of February. And you mark it not with fanfare or luxury, but with whatever scraps of joy you can scrape together. Because winter may rule your life, but it doesn't get to rule your spirit. The festival season begins with the old ways, Yule and solstice, the ancient celebrations of the dark. Before the priests started stamping Christ over everything, your ancestors lit fires and hung evergreen boughs to keep the spirits of winter at bay. Some of those customs still linger quietly, like secrets whispered after Mass. You see them in the holly branches tucked into rafters. You taste them in the spiced ale passed around under the guise of warming the blood. You hear them in the songs sung a little too loudly, a little too late into the night. In your village, Midwinter's Eve is a patchwork of Christian tradition and pagan leftovers, stitched together with desperation and laughter. You're not supposed to dance, at least not the old dances, but someone always does, usually after too much ale. Feet stomp on the packed dirt floor, hands clap, and for a few brief hours, you forget that outside the world is frozen solid. You light more candles than usual that night. The little flames flicker along the walls like they're dancing too. You hang a wreath of dried herbs and wild berries near the door, not because it's festive, but because the healer swears it keeps fevers away. Your uncle carves a wooden star and nails it above the hearth. "For the Christ child," he says. But you notice he still puts out a bowl of milk by the threshold, just in case the house spirits get restless. That's the thing about festivals in winter. They are half tradition, half bargaining. You make noise to scare away what might be lurking. You sing so the silence doesn't swallow you whole. You feast so the hunger forgets where you live. A historical fact worth knowing. Christmas and Yule weren't entirely separate in the medieval world. Many villages celebrated both, whether they admitted it or not. The church tried to clean it up, of course, added saints, banned dancing in churches, turned bonfires into candle-lit vigils, but the people remembered. They always remembered. You still see it in the way your grandmother nods to the moon on Christmas Eve, murmuring something in a language no one speaks anymore. And the food, well, it's a festival, so you stretch what you have. Someone brings out a hidden ham preserved from late autumn. Someone else unearths a wheel of cheese so old it has to be cut with an axe. You roast roots with wild garlic and pretend it's a delicacy. If a pigeon happens to accidentally die near the cottage, it goes in the stew. For one night you let yourselves believe this is a feast. The children laugh louder. The grown-ups smile longer, the ale flows freely. It's all illusion, but illusions are warm. One of the quirkiest traditions in your village is the midwinter masking. A leftover pagan practice, definitely frowned on by the priest, which of course makes it far more fun. People dress up in old animal skins, drape themselves in vines, wear carved wooden masks with too many eyes or no mouth at all. They bang on pots, march around the cottages, and demand little gifts, dried fruit, nuts, sometimes a sip of beer. It's chaotic and weird, and everyone pretends it's just for the children. But you've seen grown men take it way too seriously. Your favourite part? The Ash Maiden. Someone, usually the youngest girl in the village who hasn't lost a tooth yet, is chosen to carry the last flame through the village at night. She holds a lit taper from the central hearth, wearing a crown of twisted twigs and icy rose hips. The idea is that she's carrying the light of the old year into the new. If the flame goes out, it's considered bad luck. You remember one year it did go out, blown by a freak wind, and 2 barns collapsed by shoulder spring. No one blamed her, but everyone remembers. There's debate every year about whether all this superstition is wise or wicked. The priest gives a sermon warning against false idols and frost demons. Meanwhile, the blacksmith's wife places 3 coins under her pillow to dream of the summer harvest. Just in case, she says with a shrug. Everyone nods. Because even if you don't believe in old gods or house spirits, you believe in winter. And winter believes in you, believes you're weak, mortal, breakable, so you honour what you must. The next day things return to the usual rhythm. The cold hasn't lifted just because you danced. The bread didn't multiply because you sang. But somehow it feels lighter. You feel lighter. Like maybe you can do this for another month. Maybe 2. You carry the memory of the midwinter's eve with you, tucked in the back of your mind like a smouldering ember. When the wind howls, you remember the laughter. When your stomach growls, you remember the taste of honey on oatcakes. When the fire starts to die, you remember the flickering line of candles and how they made the whole room glow like gold. Because the truth is, winter wants you to forget those things. It wants to reduce you to quiet, to cold, to emptiness. But you refuse. Your village refuses. You celebrate not because you have much, but because you still can. So tonight, when you blow out the last candle and curl up by the hearth, you feel a little more full. Not in your stomach, in your soul. The flame inside you still burns, and that, more than anything, is how you'll survive. You wake up with your nose frozen. Again. The inside of your nostrils crackles when you breathe, and your first cough sends a stab of pain down your chest. It's official. You've caught something. Not the plague, not yet, but something wet and clingy that'll stick around for weeks. Everyone gets sick in winter. It's as regular as the snow. You almost start to think of it like a seasonal chore. Chop wood, stir the pottage, survive a lung-rattling illness. Coughing is the soundtrack of your winter. In the morning it echoes from house to house like a grim village choir. Your grandmother wheezes like a dying accordion. The baby's nose is an endless stream, and your uncle, ever the drama king, has claimed death is imminent for the past 4 days. But it's hard to joke too much, because sometimes it is. With no modern medicine, no antibiotics and no real doctors, you're left with what your village has always relied on: herbal remedies, superstition, and sheer stubbornness. Your mother brews a tea from dried yarrow and horehound, which smells like soggy hay and tastes even worse. You drink it anyway. It helps a little, maybe. Or maybe it just burns your throat so badly you forget the cough for 5 minutes. Then there's the garlic poultice. You crush cloves and smear them into linen, tie the whole mess around your neck, and try to ignore the fact that you now smell like a cursed sausage. Your sister insists on onion socks, literally slices of onion pressed against the soles of your feet to draw out the illness. The floorboards creak with every step and your dog won't come near you, but again, you do it anyway. The desperation of winter illness means you're willing to try almost anything, and then someone brings out the plague butter. It's a mix of lard, herbs, and something that smells suspiciously like candle wax. You rub it on your chest and hope it doesn't attract rats. No one remembers exactly where the recipe came from. Some say a monk from the south, others say a witch with a golden eye, but everyone agrees it's the good stuff. Unless it's not. There's debate, of course. Some say plague butter saved half the village 2 winters ago. Others say it caused that rash outbreak no one wants to talk about. Either way, you're slathered in it now, so there's no turning back. Sickness in winter is more than inconvenient. It's dangerous. You can't gather firewood if you can't breathe. You can't haul water if your legs feel like they're full of bees. And worst of all, you're using up calories just fighting off the fever. Calories you don't have to spare. That's why you've noticed the unspoken fear when someone starts coughing too hard. People glance at each other. No one says anything, but the math is quick. How long can we care for them? What happens if they don't get better? One hard historical fact. Respiratory infections were among the leading causes of death in medieval winters. Not because they were particularly exotic or mysterious, but because they lingered. Pneumonia was the silent killer. A cold could easily turn into something deeper, heavier, deadlier, and once you started coughing blood, there wasn't much anyone could do besides offer prayers and boiled cabbage water. And while the church tries to keep things spiritual, prayers for St. Sebastian, offerings at the altar, most villagers place their faith in the healer. She's not technically approved by the clergy, but they look the other way because she works small miracles. Her cottage smells like a cross between burnt sage and cat urine, and her teeth look like someone carved them from old wood, but she knows things. She touches your forehead, nods solemnly, then hands you a tincture that tastes like fermented despair. You drink it and it works, or at least you believe it works, which is almost the same thing. Now, there's a fringe theory floating around your village, one mostly whispered late at night, that illness isn't from cold or bad air at all. It's punishment, or a message. The old ways speak of winter spirits that ride the wind, touching houses where death is owed. If your fire flickers when no one's near, someone will soon fall ill, they say. And if a crow lands on your roof and caws 3 times before flying east, you might as well start digging. That might explain why last week your neighbour chalked protective runes on his doorframe. He claimed it was to keep the cold out, but everyone knew better. He lost 2 sons last winter. He's not taking chances this year. Neither are you, honestly. You've quietly started muttering the old blessing before bed, just in case. The debate over causes of illness rages quietly all season. The priest blames sin. The healer blames imbalance. Your grandmother blames you for not wearing your second pair of socks. But no one really knows. You just keep trying things: herbs, roots, stews thickened with the chicken bones, wild honey mixed with vinegar and prayers, and you wait. Sometimes you get better, sometimes people don't. You remember last winter when the miller's wife got sick. She coughed for days, wouldn't eat, barely moved. Her husband burned rosemary at the foot of the bed. They brought in the priest and the healer. And when she finally passed, they said she went peacefully. But the way her daughter screamed, no one forgets that. And now, every time you cough and taste blood in the back of your throat, your mind goes there. Still, you keep moving. You rest when you can, bundle tighter, sip your garlic tea and try not to fall behind. Winter doesn't stop for the sick. You still need water. You still need wood. You still need to chase the goat out of the pantry because she's discovered the oat barrel and refuses to share. Tonight, your fever breaks. You wake up drenched in sweat with your shirt clinging to you like wet parchment. The fire's burned low, but you see someone, probably your sister, already coaxing it back to life. You're not better yet, but you're better enough. And in winter, that's all you can ask for. You roll over, aching but grateful. Outside, the wind howls, and somewhere in the distance a crow calls once, sharp and solitary. You wait for the second. It doesn't come. Not tonight. You're not alone in your house, not even close. And no, this isn't a ghost story, though you've got plenty of those too. It's just the reality of winter. When the cold clamps down on the world outside, everything living piles together indoors. People, animals, maybe a spirit or two, but mostly animals. Livestock doesn't stay in the barn anymore, not in this weather, not unless you want them to freeze into statues before sunrise. The first to move in was the cow. Not just a cow, your cow. Her name's Brona, and she's basically family at this point. She stands near the warmest part of the cottage, just close enough to the hearth to keep her legs from stiffening up, but not so close that her tail catches fire. That's happened before. Smelled like burnt shoes and regret. Brona's breath clouds the air like a steaming kettle, and her constant chewing fills the space with the wet, rhythmic squelch of cud. It's disgusting. It's also weirdly comforting, like background noise for survival. She's stabled just behind the curtain that separates the sleeping area from what might generously be called the kitchen, and every so often, she shifts her weight with a loud snort and a creaking of floorboards. You swear she sighs louder than your uncle. Then there's the pig. Nobody invited the pig, mind you. She just started showing up near the back door whenever it snowed, looking mournful and mildly threatening, like she'd been personally betrayed by the weather. Her name is Butter, because irony's the only seasoning left. She's got the intelligence of a criminal and the manners of a drunk. She steals crusts, knocks over buckets, and has been known to chew on anything vaguely edible, including shoes, corners of her blankets, and once the priest's robe. You don't trust her, but she's warm and she's heavy, and she knows how to snuggle. So she stays. Chickens come and go, the bold ones roost on beams above your head, dropping the occasional insult in the form of poop. The rest tuck themselves under benches and behind sacks of grain, occasionally flapping up in a panic when someone steps too close. They're erratic, loud, and not very bright, but they're small and easy to warm, and the eggs, when they come, are worth the trouble. A fresh egg in February is basically currency. You once saw someone trade an egg for a pair of boots. Granted, the boots had holes, but still, an egg. And then there's the goat. She is, problematic. Her name changes depending on the day and how recently she's headbutted someone. Today she's Mistake. She's noisy, nosy, and has somehow figured out how to climb onto the table. You've woken up more than once to find her staring at you from the top of a barrel like a furry gargoyle chewing on your only spoon. But she gives milk, which your baby cousin needs, so no one's kicking her out, yet. The result of all this livestock cohabitation? Chaos. And smell. Oh, the smell, it's a warm stew of smoke, sweat, hay, manure, and mystery. You've gone nose-blind to most of it, but every time someone from the manor house stops by, rare, but it happens, their face does something involuntary when they step inside. You just shrug. It's survival. Besides, they don't have a pig that doubles as a foot warmer. A cold, hard historical fact. Bringing animals indoors during winter wasn't a medieval quirk. It was a necessity. In harsh climates, especially in parts of northern and central Europe, peasants built longhouses where humans and animals lived under the same roof. The body heat from livestock helped warm the house. And the animals stayed alive, which meant fresh milk, eggs, and meat when desperation hit. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't charming. It was practical and smelly. There's an old belief around your village that animals can speak on Midwinter's Eve, just for a few minutes. You're not sure where that came from, but you remember once, as a child, hiding in the hay near Brunner, just after the candle was blown out, holding your breath. You swore you heard her mutter something. Could have been your imagination, could have been a ghost, or maybe she just really, really hated the priest too. Here's a quirky thing. Some villagers dress their cows in charms. A bell tied with red string, a ribbon around the horn, Butter. The pig once wore a crown of dried thistle, which you suspect she made herself. People say it keeps the frost away. Others say it stops the beast from carrying sickness into the home. You don't really believe it, but you also don't not believe it. Every charm, every ribbon, every herb-stuffed pouch hanging from a goat's neck is a kind of whispered hope, a tiny ward against the deep freeze. But the animals aren't just warm bodies, They're part of the rhythm of your days. Feeding them becomes a ritual. Milking is therapy. Talking to them, completely normal. You tell Brona about your dreams. You vent your frustration to the chickens. Butter listens better than most of your family. And the goat, well, she's definitely judging you. You can see it in her eyes. There's debate in the village about whether animals feel the cold like humans do. Some claim cows don't mind it at all, that they generate heat from the inside. Others wrap their sheep in old cloaks and tuck their dogs under beds, swearing that they can catch the winter chills just like a child. The priest says animals are God's dumb creatures immune to worldly suffering. But you saw a pig shiver last week and lay down near the fire like it was hugging it. That's not dumb, that's strategy, and sure, sometimes it's maddening. You wake up with a hoof in your side, you step in something unspeakable on your way to relieve yourself. You've had to drag a chicken out of the flour bin twice this week. But there's comfort in it too. You're surrounded by breathing, snuffling, occasionally farting life. And in winter, life, any life, is something to cling to. Tonight, you sit by the fire, Butter snoring at your feet like a hairy rock, Brona lowing softly as she shifts her weight, and the goat trying to eat the hem of your cloak. You lean back against the wall, sore and tired but warm, and for the first time today you let yourself feel something close to content. The animals are inside, the wind is outside, the fire's still going. You made it another day. You learn to ration your light like you ration your food, carefully, grudgingly, because light in winter is precious, rare and fleeting and too expensive to waste. The sun rises late and sulks through the sky before ducking behind the hills well before supper. That leaves you with darkness. A lot of it. And in a world without electricity, that darkness settles into every corner like something alive. Your main defense against it? Candles. But not the fat, cozy kind you're probably picturing. No vanilla-scented luxuries here. These are skinny little things, made from tallow, animal fat boiled down until it smells like regret and moulded into stubby sticks that drip more than they shine. They're smoky, greasy, and they spsettes if you so much as breathe too hard near them. Beeswax candles are nicer, brighter, longer lasting, and completely out of reach unless you're nobility or a monk with connections. A single tallow candle is a household treasure. You burn it only when absolutely necessary. Writing, mending, childbirth, or when someone insisted on reading scripture even though no one can pronounce half the words. Most nights you go without. Instead, you rely on the fire's glow and the weirdly intimate closeness of early bedtime. When the sun sets, the day is over. Not because you're tired, but because what else are you supposed to do? The cottage changes when the light disappears. Shadows stretch across the walls like slow-moving fingerids, shapes blur, familiar things, baskets, stools, piles of laundry become strange and ominous. You learn to navigate your world by memory. How many steps to the hearth, where the table leg juts out? Which part of the floor creaks and wakes the baby? You don't need to see anymore. You just know. But still, when someone lights a candle, everyone gathers close. Faces appear from the gloom like ghosts drawn to a flame. You lean in, eyes wide, watching the wax pool and the wick flicker. It becomes a kind of ceremony. Conversations get quieter. Jokes get darker. Sometimes you tell stories, not for fun really, but to keep the silence away. A hard historical truth. Medieval peasants lived most of their winter lives in near total darkness. Candles and lamp oil were expensive, time-consuming to make, and always in short supply. Many households relied entirely on the hearth, moonlight, and the occasional rushlight, a sort of proto-candle made by soaking reeds in animal fat. They burned fast, stank worse than your old uncle's boots, and dripped hot grease on anyone foolish enough to stand beneath them. You've tried rushlights. The reeds snap too easily. They hiss when damp, but sometimes they're all you have. You wedge one in a lump of clay and hold it above the page, while your cousin tries to copy a prayer, squinting like a mole. One mistake and the whole thing catches fire. You blew out 2 of your eyebrows last winter learning that lesson. You also learn to listen differently in the dark. Sound travels farther when the world's asleep. You hear the goat shifting, a chicken cooing like it's dreaming, the slow wet cough of your grandfather, the wind, always the wind. It whistles through the cracks like a living thing or a warning. Some nights it sounds like howling, too high-pitched to be human, too long to be wind. You pretend you didn't hear it. There's a quirky belief among some of the old folks that darkness itself has a mind. That if you leave a candle burning too long, it draws attention, not from people, from some things. Spirits mostly. Shadows that used to be men. They say if you fall asleep with a candle lit, It burns away more than wax. It burns time. You wake up older, more tired, as if the darkness took something from you while you weren't looking. Your grandmother keeps a thick curtain over the window, not for privacy, but to keep the dark out, not the absence of light, the actual dark. "Don't let it in," she mutters every evening as she tugs it closed. You used to laugh, not anymore. There's debate in the village about how much darkness is too much. The priest says it's God's will that you rest when the sun goes down. The healer says too much sleep leads to melancholy. The blacksmith, who gets up before dawn no matter the season, says sleep is for the weak. You've decided they're all wrong. Winter isn't about sleep, it's about waiting. In the dark, with one eye open, you've had entire days where you only saw real light for an hour or two. A grey sliver at the horizon, barely enough to chop wood or haul water, then it's gone again, like it never happened. On those days, time stretches like cold dough. You eat dinner in the dark, you argue in the dark, you love in the dark, and when you close your eyes at night, you're never entirely sure whether you slept or just paused. And somehow the darkness makes people weird, more irritable, more dramatic, more likely to mutter things under their breath that they probably shouldn't. The darkness presses down on the cottage like a wool blanket soaked in snow and no-melt. You start to miss light in a way that aches. Not just candles, sunlight. Real sunlight. Daddy-so. On your face. In your bones. You dream about it. Literally. The other night you dreamed you were swimming in gold, weightless and warm. You woke up clawing at your blanket, weeping, but there's also something beautiful about it. The way the stars look from your frozen doorstep, clear and sharp like diamonds flung across velvet. The way the moonlight sneaks in through the cracks and paints silver ribbons on the floor. The way a single flame can make an entire room feel alive. You appreciate it more. You respect it. Tonight, you light one candle. Just one. You place it in the centre of the table where everyone can see. You sit close, shoulder to shoulder with your family and a pig that smells like yesterday's disaster, and you watch the flame sway. It's small, pathetic even, but it's yours. And as the wind howls and the world groans under ice, that tiny light becomes your cathedral. Your defence, your hope. You won't waste it. It starts with the snow. Not a gentle flutter of flakes like you might wish for, but a slow, relentless dumping. It piles in silence, higher than your boots, then your knees, then halfway up the door. You try to keep up with it, shoveling, sweeping, kicking it away with numb feet, but it doesn't care. It keeps coming. A white, spithering siege. You can't even see the fields anymore, or the fence, or the road out of the village. The world becomes a quiet, colourless void. And then you're trapped. It happens every year, more or less. A week, sometimes 2. Once, it was nearly a month. The snow drifts up past the windows, and the wind howls like a beast that's lost its prey. You hear it groaning in the chimney, rattling the shutters, slipping in through every crack and knot in the wood. Cold air pulses through the floorboards like it has a pulse. You pull your cloak tighter and pretend you don't hear it whisper your name. You definitely hear it whisper your name. You can't go out for water. Can't get to the barn. You open the door once to check the sky, and a whole wall of snow collapses into the house. It takes 2 hours to shovel it out, and now your brother's foot is frostbitten, because he thought he could do it barefoot just for a minute. No one says it out loud, but you're worried about his toes and his judgment. So now you're all stuck inside together, the whole family, plus the animals, plus a half-frozen tinker who stumbled into the village the day before the storm and hasn't left since. He's got a bag full of broken tools and stories about towns that don't exist. You don't trust him, but he snores less than the pig. So he's allowed to stay, for now. The walls feel smaller every day. Not just metaphorically. You swear they're physically closing in. There's condensation on everything, dripping from the beams, curling the corners of parchment, turning straw into mush. The fire never quite dries you out. Your clothes are damp, your skin is raw, and the room smells like wet wool, wood smoke, and human stew. Cabin fever? That's the polite term. What you're experiencing is medieval madness. Your little brother starts naming the icicles hanging outside the window. Your grandmother insists there's a stranger living under the floorboards and begins shouting at the cracks. Your aunt bursts into tears because the bread didn't rise. Your cousin laughs for an hour because someone farted. You sit in the corner and slowly peel an onion for no reason other than the satisfaction of layers. Here's a historical fact for you. During long snow-ins, medieval villagers often fell into what we'd now call seasonal affective disorder, but they had no name for it. They called it winter melancholy, the greyness, or just the heaviness. Some believed it was a humoral imbalance, too much black bile in the body. Others thought it was a form of possession. Either way, the cure was the same. Wait it out, or try to burn it out with spiced wine and loud singing. You've tried both. Results are mixed. And here's something even stranger. In the far north, some folks believed that snow could listen, that it absorbed sound and memory, and in the spring, gave them back to the earth. That's why you're supposed to whisper kind words during blizzards, even if no one can hear you. You're not sure you believe that, but the last time someone shouted curses at a storm, the roof collapsed 3 days later. Coincidence? Maybe, but you've been whispering ever since. As the days blur together, routine becomes your anchor. Wake, stoke the fire, eat whatever's edible, chase the goat off the table, mend clothes, carve spoons, sharpen knives, tell stories. Sleep, repeat. You've started marking time by the length of candles and the pattern of dreams. Your uncle insists it's Sunday because he dreamed of bells. Your grandmother says it's Tuesday because the soup boiled unevenly. You say it doesn't matter because time has frozen with the water in the wash basin. You have to get creative to stay sane. Someone invents a game with stones and chalk. Another person starts drawing tiny faces on turnips. You organise a play using blankets as costumes and the chicken as a dragon. It's not very good, but the laughter is real. You haven't heard that sound in a while? It's a little cracked around the edges, but you'll take it. There's debate in the house about whether this storm is the worst anyone's ever seen. Your father says no. He remembers one in his youth that buried a house. Your grandmother disagrees. She swears she saw this one coming in the pattern of migrating birds. The tinker, naturally, claims this is nothing compared to the Black Storm of 89, which no one else has heard of and probably didn't happen. Still, you all tell your versions like it matters, like measuring past miseries might shrink the current one. Meanwhile, the snow keeps falling. Outside pay, it muffles the world. There's no sound beyond the occasional creak of settling ice or the distant crack of a tree branch surrendering. You don't even hear the wolves anymore, which is somehow worse than hearing them. Everything is still. Too still. Then one morning something changes. You wake to light, real light, slicing through a crack in the shutters. It's thin, pale, but golden. You throw open the window, and for the first time in what feels like a century, you see blue sky. The snow still lies deep and cruel, but the air smells different. Less like death, more like hope. It could be a trick. The cold is still bone deep, and there's more snow in the forecast, probably. But still, this feels like a beginning. The tinker leaves that afternoon. After borrowing 2 biscuits and half a pair of gloves, no one tries to stop him. He leaves behind a tin cup and a story about a woman made of snow who lives in the woods. No one believes it. But no one throws the cup away either. You dig a little path through the snow with a broken shovel and a lot of grunting, just far enough to get to the well. The water is ice, but you still cheer like a hero. Eta wo. You sit by the fire, steam rising from your boots, and feel something close to pride. You were snowed in, you didn't eat each other, you didn't burn the goat, you didn't go mad. Not completely. You made it through the white stones. That's worth something. They say wolves don't come close to the village, that they stick to the woods, skulk along the tree line, hunt only at night. They say that if you hang a strip of iron by your door and leave out the bones far from the cottages, the wolves will leave you alone. That's what they say. You, however, are not entirely convinced, because last night you heard them. Not far off, not distant like a bedtime story or a bad dream, but close. Too close. A low, guttural howl that started behind the barn and seemed to circle the cottage like a question. A second, sharper one answered it. The dogs whimpered. The chickens fell silent. Even the goat paused mid-chew, staring at the shutter like it might snap off its hinges. It's wolf season. This is the part of winter when the hunger becomes unbearable, not just for you, but for everything. The rabbits vanish. The deer have long since migrated. The ground is too hard to dig. The streams are frozen solid, and the snow covers every scent. And the wolves? They get desperate. Bolder, smarter. You saw prints this morning, long clawed, pacing back and forth near the compost pile. One set, then another, larger. They moved in slow loops, like something testing the edge of your world. Your father said nothing, just threw more ash on the path and sharpened the wood axe with a little more tension than usual. And now no one goes out alone. You travel in pairs. even just to fetch water or chop wood. You carry torches, make noise, bang pans together. Children aren't allowed past the fence line. The cow and goat stay tethered inside even if they stink up the house, even if Butter the pig continues to snore like she owns the place. It's worth it, because you've heard stories of wolves that stalk a person for days, that mimic cries for help, that wait in silence just beyond torchlight. One of your neighbours swears that, as a child, he saw a wolf stand on its hind legs and watch him through the window. Everyone laughed. But no one told him he was wrong. A grim historical fact for your nightmares. During particularly harsh winters in the Middle Ages, wolves were not just a threat, they were plagues. Packs would invade towns, snatch livestock from within walls, and occasionally, horrifically, drag off a child or a weakened adult. In 1420s France, a record-breaking cold spell drove wolves to form super packs that ravaged villages. The people called them les loups démons, demon wolves. Not poetic, just accurate. There's an old belief in your village that the wolves can smell sin, that they won't cross the threshold of a virtuous home. So of course, now everyone's scrubbing their souls clean. The priest has never had so many confessions. Your cousin even apologised and dad for stealing your knife last summer, right out of nowhere. He said he just didn't want to smell like prey. You said nothing, but you hid your jerky deeper in the hay pile. And here's something extra unnerving. Last week, the blacksmith's dog disappeared. One moment it was in the yard, barking like it had caught something. The next, silence. They found blood in the snow the next morning, nothing else, no tracks, no fur, just red and white. A scene so stark it made your stomach churn. Some villagers have started staying up at night, taking shifts at the windows, watching the tree line. You joined once, just once. You wrapped yourself in every layer you could find, held a spear you didn't know how to use, and sat in the dark with 3 others. You didn't see anything, but you felt something. There was a moment around the second hour when the fire cracked and everyone froze. Not because of the noise, but because everything else went silent. The wind stopped, the chickens stopped. Even Butter snored more softly. The kind of silence that isn't empty but expectant. Like something was holding its breath right outside. Then the dog started barking in the next house over. And it didn't stop for a long time. There's debate about what to do if a wolf does show up. The priest says prayer. The healer says fire. Your father says run in a zigzag and then yells at you for laughing. The truth is, no one really knows. These aren't fairy tale wolves. They're not noble or mystical or misunderstood. They're hungry. That's it. Hungry, smart, and not afraid of your little fence made of twigs and hope. Some folks have taken to leaving out bits of food, bones, scraps, a piece of bread soaked in ale, in hopes that the wolves will eat and leave. Others say that just encourages them. Makes them think you're easy prey. One particularly loud neighbour, who notably has not been asked to keep watch, swears we should trap one and string it up at the village gate as a warning. Show them who's boss, he says. They'll respect strength. You don't say anything, but you make a mental note not to walk past his house alone. Ever. Tonight it's quiet again. Which is worse. The sky's clear, moonlight sharp as a blade on the snow, and the trees outside look like black bones sticking out of the ground. You pull your cloak tighter, watching the shadows shift beyond the fence. And then you hear it. Not close, not yet, but unmistakable. A howl, long and low, rising like steam from the forest's edge. Then another, to the east. A third, far off but deeper. A chorus building in the dark. Your sister squeezes your hand. You hadn't noticed she was standing beside you. You step back from the shutter. You don't speak. Inside, Butter grunts in her sleep. The fire crackles. Your grandmother mutters a prayer into her apron, and outside the wolves sing. You hope they're not singing for you. This morning the ale barrel froze solid. You tapped it just to be sure, and the sound it made was like knocking on a coffin. Hollow, cold, final. You stared at it longer than necessary, trying to will the liquid inside to thaw. Because when the ale freezes, it's more than a minor inconvenience. It's a sign. A bad one. One of those quiet little omens that tells you the winter is reaching its cruel peak. Ale is supposed to be your comfort, your safety net. It's not just a drink. It's your water substitute, your celebration, your medicine, your excuse. It's what gets you through the long nights and helps numb the cold. No one drinks plain water if they can help it, especially in winter when the streams are frozen and the snow tastes like chimney soot. Ale is the universal cure. Got a headache? Ale. Too cold? Ale. Someone died? Ella, someone didn't die, L. So when the barrel turned to ice, you all sat around it like mourners at a wake. Someone tried to break the top open with a mallet. Didn't work. Another cousin suggested wrapping it in warm blankets. That didn't work either, unless the goal was to look pathetic. Your uncle offered to just lick the top and see what happens. You considered it, briefly, but in the end, you all agreed to move it closer to the fire and hope for a miracle. In the meantime, you're stuck with the dregs, watery, bitter, and questionably fermented. It's better than nothing, but just barely. It tastes like someone boiled shoe leather in a rusty kettle. But when your father raises his mug and toasts to the warmth of the fire and the coldness of our luck, everyone drinks anyway. Because what else are you going to do? You might think monks had it easier. And in some ways they did. They brewed their own ale. And some abbeys were famous for it. Thick, dark, nourishing stuff that was practically a meal. Some monasteries even developed liquid fasting, or where monks would drink strong beer in place of food during Lent. But not your priest. No, he drinks the same sour swill as the rest of you, although he claims to bless it before every sip, as if that'll somehow improve the flavour. It doesn't. Your own ale is brewed in a crack barrel in the corner of the shed, watched over by your cousin and a suspicious-looking cat that seems emotionally invested in the process. It's made from barley if you can get to it, or oats if you can't. You've even heard of people using peas, and if the yeast gods smile upon you, it turns into something drinkable. If not, well, it still gets you dizzy, which, let's be honest, is the point most of the time. A fun historical fact to sip on: in the medieval period, even children drank small beer, a weak ale with low alcohol content, because it was safer than untreated water. Brewing, even at the lowest levels, meant boiling the liquid, which killed off most of what would otherwise kill you. It wasn't about getting drunk. It was about not dying of dysentery. Getting tipsy was just a happy side effect, and yet the cold changes everything. Your brewing slows to a crawl, the yeast barely reacts. Fermentation becomes a guessing game. You huddle by the barrel like druids around a sacred cauldron, whispering encouragement to the foam. The ale doesn't bubble, it sulks. It sits there like a disappointed parent. You start to take it personally. One of your neighbours swears by the drunken log method, setting a piece of wood soaked in strong ale near the hearth to keep the brewing barrel warm by spiritual association. He also once claimed his dog could predict snowfall, so take that with a generous pinch of salt. Still, in times like these, even the most absurd rituals seem worth trying. You've burned rosemary over the barrel, you've sung to it. Your sister tried complimenting it. Nothing worked. But every so often someone manages to unearth a hidden stash. A sealed jug buried in the snow behind the barn. A forgotten skin tucked under a floorboard. You'd think they'd drink it in secret. But no, these rare finds get shared reverently in small wooden cups passed around the fire. Not because you're generous, but because it feels wrong to keep something that good to yourself. Like hoarding a blessing. Of course, not all drunkenness is joyful. With the ale frozen and food low, tempers rise faster than the fire. Your aunt and uncle had a screaming match last night over a missing mug. It ended with him swearing he'd sleep in the shed, which lasted exactly 5 minutes until the wind hit him. He slunk back in without a word, and no one mentioned it. That's the rule. We fight, we stew, we drink what we can, and we do not talk about it later. There's debate among the villagers about how much drinking is too much. The priest preaches moderation. The tinker says moderation is for people with options. Your grandmother says if you can still walk straight, you haven't had enough. You say nothing, just nurse your cup and hope it warms your stomach enough to forget the cold in your bones. Some nights you drink to remember. A summer dance, a spring bonfire, the taste of berries. Other nights you drink to forget. The ache in your legs, the food that's gone, the friend who didn't make it through last winter. That last one hits hardest when the ale is strong. Tonight someone cracks open the emergency jug, sealed in wax and hidden since harvest. It's rich and dark, almost syrupy, and smells like something you're not sure is entirely legal. You take a sip, it tastes like courage. Everyone toasts. No one says what they're toasting for, but the silence feels understood. A shared wish, a shared need. You sit a little closer to the fire. The snow howls outside, but you barely hear it. Butter snores, the goat farts, and the candle on the table leans like it's trying to eavesdrop. For now, the barrel is thawing, the ale is flowing, and you feel just warm enough to believe spring might come back someday. There's no such thing as a snow day when you're a medieval kid. No sledding, no hot cocoa, No blissful announcement that school's been cancelled, because there is no school to cancel. You wake up groggy and stiff, still wearing the same clothes you slept in, because everyone sleeps in their clothes, and the first thing you hear is your mother's voice calling your name, not sweetly, not gently, just loud enough to cut through the cold air like a blade. Get the goat off the table. Your job starts before your feet hit the floor. The cottage is still dim. The fire has slumped into a half-hearted glow, and your breath clouds in front of your face as you sit up. You stretch, hoping someone else will deal with the goat. No one does. Butter the pig grunts in solidarity as you shoo the goat down with a stick, which she tries to eat. Then it's chores. All war, always chores. You carry wood from the stack, what's left of it. You fill buckets with snow to melt over the fire. You check the henhouse for eggs, unlikely, and if there is one, you treat it like it's made of gold. You help stir the pottage. You haul chamber pots outside if the path's not too frozen. And when there's nothing else immediately falling apart, you spin thread, or scrape hides, or sweep, or listen to your older relatives yell about how you don't know what real work is. All before breakfast. And breakfast, by the way, is probably yesterday's pottage with some stale bread scraped across the surface like garnish. Unless it's a special day, then it's just pottage with extra turnip. You're tired, everyone's tired. But the rule is simple. If you can stand up, you can work. The littlest ones get away with curling up by the fire and playing with carved toys or bits of string. But as soon as your hands are strong enough to hold a knife or a bucket, you become part of the system. One great creaking smoky survival machine. One historical truth: medieval children weren't babied, they were smaller adults, expected to contribute from as early as age 5. Girls learned to spin, cook and mind their younger siblings. Boys carried water, fetched kindling and helped in the fields when they weren't buried under snow. There were no snowball fights unless someone accidentally threw one and got smacked for wasting time. That said, kids did find ways to be kids. You sneak joy into the cracks between chores. Short races to the well, quick snowball ambushes where no one's looking. Little games played with pebbles and carved bones. Your favourite is Freeze the Fingers, a deeply stupid game where you stick your hand in the snow and see who can last the longest. You've lost every time. Your brother has nerves of iron and probably brain damage. There's one weird game that's only played in winter, during the long dark evenings when the chores are done and the fire still burns bright. It's called Shadow Hunt. One person stands near the fire and makes shadow creatures on the wall. Owls, wolves, giants, whatever your fingers can shape. The rest of you guess what they are, and if you guess wrong, you have to crawl under the table and stay there until someone rescues you with a candle. No one remembers who invented it. It's weird, slightly terrifying and absolutely sacred. You've carved a toy yourself, a little horse with crooked legs whittled from a scrap of wood. It lives under your sleeping mat and you pretend you don't care about it, but you'd fight anyone who tried to take it. You gave it a name last winter, Sir Trottelot. He's brave, he's fast. He has survived the rat incident of last March and the Great Soup Spill of August. He is technically the longest-lived horse in the village. There's debate among the grown-ups about whether children should be allowed to play at all during winter. Some say it keeps spirits high and helps them grow strong. Others say it's a waste of food to let idle hands burn energy on nonsense. You hear arguments all the time. Your mother says laughter warms the blood. Your father says you laugh too much for someone who hasn't finished splitting kindling. You're not even sure how old you are. Maybe 10, maybe 12. Birthdays aren't exactly an event when you're a peasant. They blur together. Your grandmother thinks you were born the same year the river froze so hard it cracked the bridge. Which narrows it down to several options, and don't even get started on clothes. You wear your older brother's hand-me-down tunic, now several inches too short and patched at the elbows with bits of sackcloth. Your shoes are made from leftover leather, and held together with twine and willpower. You haven't felt your toes since last week, and yet somehow the pig's blanket is nicer than yours. Still, there's something special about the winter, even with all the misery. The way the icicles sparkle in the morning sun, the sound of snow crunching underfoot when it's fresh and untouched, the shared giggles when the priest nearly slips on his way to Mass. You may be exhausted, underfed and sore in places you can't name, but you're also oddly alive. One of the stranger facts about being a child in winter is that you grow up faster. Not just in chores or expectations, but in your mind. You learn to observe, to stay quiet when the grown-ups argue about food, to nod when someone says things will be better next month, even if you're not sure they will, You learn which relatives are generous and which are cruel. You learn who hides snacks and who shares. You learn what fear feels like, not from monsters or bedtime tales, but from frostbite, fevers and silence. But you also learn joy, tiny, fierce joy, like the warmth of your sibling's foot pressed against yours under the blanket, or the first spark of the fire in the morning, or the sharp, glorious crack of a frozen log splitting clean in two under your axe. It's all survival, but it's also life. Tonight you and the other kids huddle near the fire, whispering about the shapes in the shadows. You make up stories about the wolves and the moon and whether the sun forgot where your village is. The grown-ups are drinking weak ale and pretending not to listen. The pig has claimed the best spot by the fire. Again, you look at the flickering candle. You look at your little horse. You pull your blanket up to your chin and pretend it's armour. Tomorrow there will be chores, and cold, and soup, and snow, but tonight you're still a kid, and that matters. You hear him before you see him. A soft jingle, like coins in a leather pouch, followed by the crunch of boots on snow and the low thump of a walking stick. It's not a sound you expect in the dead of winter. Not now, not when the roads are frozen solid, and even the wolves seem to have hunkered down. You push aside the shutter and squint into the late afternoon gloom, blinking away the glare from the snowdrifts. There he is, just a silhouette at first, hunched and bundled, a sack slung over one shoulder, the faintest trace of smoke rising from his breath. A stranger. He's coming into the village from the East Road, the one that barely qualifies as a path this time of year. Only the most determined, the most desperate, or the most foolish travel in a storm like this. But here he is, picking his way past the snowbanks, boots caked in ice, eyes shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hood. By the time he reaches the centre of the village, a small crowd has gathered, more from curiosity than welcome. Strangers in winter are rare, too rare. They bring questions, and danger, and sometimes opportunity. He calls himself a tinker, which you already guessed from the clanging of pots and pans hanging off his pack. His voice is rough, foreign, the kind of voice that sounds like it's eaten a few winters raw. He says he's got wares to trade. Needles, thread, belt buckles, a chipped mirror, even a small vial of something that smells vaguely like rosemary and sin. The adults gather around, eyeing his wares like wolves around a butchered deer. And he brings stories. Oh, so many stories. He talks of a town 3 valleys over where they haven't seen snow in a month, where the trees are already budding and the goats are birthing twins. Lies. Probably. But you lean in anyway, because the way he says it, so vivid, so certain, you can see it. For a moment you forget the frost clinging to your boots and the ache in your bones. You see green, and warmth, and hope. He tells other stories too. Stranger ones. Of a creature that walks on 2 legs and wears a man's face but leaves no prints in the snow. Of a hermit living in a cave who can predict the weather with bird bones. Of a woman who drowned herself in a frozen river and now sings lullabies from beneath the ice. Your aunt crosses herself at that one, and pulls your cousin closer. The tinker just smiles, wide and unsettling. You offer him half a loaf of dark bread and a handful of dried berries in exchange for a spindle of real thread. He accepts with a wink and gives you an extra needle for your trouble. You nod your thanks, but keep your eye on him. He's got the look of a man who's seen things, and maybe caused a few himself. A hard historical truth. Tinkers were a real part of medieval life, travelling from village to village with tools, metal goods, repairs and rumours. In a world without reliable news, the tinker was the news. He knew which roads were open, which lords were hiring soldiers, which towns had burned. He also might be a thief or a spy, or just a lonely man trying to make it through the snow with a bag of buttons and bad knees. There's a long-standing debate in the village every time a stranger appears in winter. Some say they should be turned away. Too risky, too unpredictable. Others say turning away a traveller in the dead of winter is a death sentence, and God will not forget such cruelty. Your father is firmly in the second camp, which is why the tinker ends up sleeping in your cottage that night, curled near the fire with his pack clutched like a child. He doesn't snore, but he talks in his sleep, low muttering, names you don't recognise, places that might not exist. You and your sister lie awake on your straw mat, listening. One name keeps coming up. Agatha. Always in a whisper. Always with something like regret. In the morning he denies it, says you must have dreamed it. But he leaves half a silver coin on the windowsill before he goes, and no one asks questions. There's something uncanny about him. Not dangerous exactly, but off. He knows things he shouldn't. At breakfast he mentions your dog by name, though you don't remember telling him. He asks about a storm from 3 years ago like he was there, but he couldn't have been. He hums songs no one's taught him. One of the elders insists he has the gift, the sight. Your grandmother says he just drinks too much. Still, he's polite. He fixes your cousin's broken clasp, sharpens 3 knives, mends the hinge on the chicken coop, and then, just as suddenly as he arrived, he's gone. Leaves before dawn, no goodbyes, just footprints stretching into the snow until the wind swallows them whole. A few days later, you find a small brass bell in the woodpile. It wasn't there before. It rings sweetly, softly, like laughter in a dream. You hang it above the door, just in case. Because even if he was just a tinker, just a lonely man wandering through the frozen heart of winter, he brought more than wares. He brought movement, a crack in the stillness, a breath of the outside world. A reminder that beyond the snow and the chores and the shadows, there's still a road, still people, still stories waiting to be told. And for a village frozen in place, that's more valuable than gold. The sheep are shivering. That's how you know things are getting bad again. Not that they're ever especially warm-looking. Wool doesn't count for much once it's soaked through and crusted with frost. But now they're huddled together so tight they look like one creature with a dozen legs in a single collective panic. You peer through the barn slats, snow crunching under your boots, and see their little black faces turn toward you like they expect you to fix it, and you wish you could. The hay's almost gone. You've been rationing it for weeks, stretching it out with old straw and dried nettles, even sawdust once, though the sheep looked personally offended by that. They need more. So do the goats, so does the cow, and none of them are good at hiding their hunger. The goat's been screaming at you like a furious toddler every time you walk past the barn. Brona, the cow, has taken to licking the inside of the empty feed bucket with the slow, tragic rhythm of someone reminiscing about better days. Feeding the animals in winter isn't just kindness, it's entrance. These creatures are your future. The sheep mean wool, the goats mean milk, the cow might mean calves if you're lucky, and butter if you're luckier. If they die, your spring dies with them, which is why your uncle just spent the entire morning trudging through snow taller than his knees to beg a handful of hay from the neighbouring village. He came back with nothing but frostbite and a story about wolves following him for half a mile. The livestock have started turning on each other. Not in violence exactly, but in looks, suspicion. You know that feeling too well. You're all hungry, you're all tired. The difference is, the humans know how to complain, the animals can only stare. A harsh historical truth. Medieval winters were just as brutal for animals as for humans, and sometimes worse. Hay stocks ran out before spring grass returned, and livestock had to be culled, bartered, or left to freeze. There are accounts of villages slaughtering animals not for food, but because they simply couldn't feed them anymore. A starving pig might be meat now, but a living one in spring meant survival. There's debate in your household right now: keep feeding the animals and risk starving yourselves, or slaughter a few now, and ensure there's enough for the rest. The pig is safe, but mostly because no one wants to deal with her squeal. The chickens are borderline, they'll live off table scraps and snow fleas if necessary. The sheep, though, the sheep are in danger. Your grandmother says it's better to lose one sheep than let the whole flock suffer. Your father says not yet, not while you still have that one stack of dried grass hidden behind the shed. Your mother says nothing, just sharpens the kitchen knife more often than she used to. You pretend not to notice. And then there's the calf. Born last month, too early, in a freezing stall with steam rising off its tiny back like a spirit leaving the body. It shouldn't have survived, but it did, just barely. You named him Frosty, which was cute for exactly a day. Now the name feels like a joke with teeth. He's weak, shivering, ribs starting to show. You feed him with scraps of milk and whisper promises you might not be able to keep. This morning, you caught your brother feeding the calf with bread soaked in warm ale. Keeps him from shaking, he said. Eyes hard. You didn't tell anyone. You just nodded and gave him your half of the crust. You do what you can. Braid straw into bundles, scrape moss from the sides of old fences, mix boiled tree bark into the goat's feed. You saw someone in town try to feed his horse a stew made out of oats and boiled wool. The horse didn't make it. The stew weirdly did. Meanwhile, your hands are raw from breaking ice in the water troughs. You go out 3 times a day to chip away the surface. Your fingers numb through the gloves you patched 3 times already. The animals crowd around you as you work, their hot breath forming little clouds, their eyes wide and too human. Sometimes you talk to them just to fill the silence. Sometimes you sing, though you're not sure why. One strange village belief that animals understand human speech best in winter. that the cold thins the veil between creature and soul. Your cousin once said the cow thanked her for an extra scoop of feed. Your neighbour swore a goat predicted a frost. You don't believe them, not really, but when Brona looks at you like that, big dark eyes wet and heavy, you start to wonder. You remember a story your grandmother told last winter, of a farm where the animals spoke on Midwinter's Eve, not just words, but full conversations, prophecies even. They warned the farmer of an avalanche, he ignored them, died 2 days later. Moral of the story? Always listen to your animals, and maybe don't anger the spirits of frost. Tonight the family holds a quiet council near the hearth. No yelling, just the steady, exhausted rhythm of people who've been through this before. 2 sheep will go, no names are speaking. You pretend to sleep while they talk, but you know which ones they mean. In the morning you help, you don't cry, you've done this before, and you'll do it again. It's quick, it's quiet. You thank them because your grandmother taught you to. And when it's done, you go back into the house, hands red, face blank. The fire feels different that night, like it's burning in honour of something. You eat well for the first time in weeks, broth thick with meat and fat that coats your lips and makes you feel human again. No one says much, you just chew, swallow, breathe, and then you take the bones, clean and white, and bury them behind the barn under the snow. Not because you have to, because it feels right. You go back inside, the calf is sleeping, the goat is chewing something she's definitely not supposed to. The sheep are quiet, huddled together like one. They made it through another day. So did you. You don't hear them, you feel them. The church bells, not the cheery kind you remember from feast days or weddings, or those warm spring mornings when everything smells like grass and goat poop and optimism. No, these are the cold bells, the winter bells, slow, echoing, mournful. They throb through the village like distant thunder or the sound of your own heart, when it's beating too hard and you're trying to pretend everything's fine. You glance toward the church steeple, the only stone structure for miles, its roof slanted like it's trying to shoulder the snow away. The bell tower looms against a grey sky so dense you're convinced it's pressing down on the world. That low, metallic clang cuts through the fog and the silence and the routine, and everyone freezes for just a second, like someone's pulled a string tight across the whole village. Someone's died. No one says it out loud. They don't need to. The bells only ring like that for death or disaster, and winter's not generous with alternatives. You're outside, splitting kindling with numb hands, and you rest the axe against a tree stump as you listen. 1 toll, 2, 3, then silence. You count them because that's what you're supposed to do, 1 ring for each year of age. This one is short. A child then, probably the baker's youngest. She'd been coughing hard for weeks. You swallow the lump in your throat and start chopping again, not because you're heartless, but because someone still needs to make sure the fire doesn't die. The bells echo in your bones for the rest of the day. In this village, the church isn't just a place of worship, it's the nerve centre. The warning system, the place where you go when you've got nothing else to give but prayer, or tears, or storments. Even if you're not especially devout, and if you're being honest, most people aren't in any deep theological way, you still go. You kneel when told. You mumble the Latin even though no one speaks it. You cross yourself and bow your head and stand in the flickering candlelight while the priest mumbles about mercy. Because it's not really about understanding, it's about presence. Being seen, being counted among the living. And the priest, he does what he can. He's younger than most priests you've known, sharp-eyed and thinner than seems healthy. He talks a lot about suffering and tests of faith, which feels a little rich coming from someone who sleeps in a stone building with thick blankets and a private hearth. But he visits the sick, he helps bury the dead, and he never lets the fire go out in the chapel. There's something about that little flickering flame on the altar that matters more than most people will admit. Even on the darkest days, when the wind screams like the world's being flayed, someone walks to the chapel to light a candle. For the dead, for the sick, for the unborn calf, for hope, sometimes all of the above. One hard historical truth. During the Middle Ages, the church wasn't just a spiritual authority, it was a literal sanctuary. In times of famine, flood, plague, or snowstorms that just wouldn't quit, villagers gathered there not only to pray but to sleep, to warm up and to hear the latest news. It was where you went when you didn't know where else to go. That said, belief was never one size fits all. Sure, the priest might preach about divine punishment and repentance, but out here, with snow creeping under doors and children coughing up blood, you hedge your bets. You go to church on Sunday, yes. But you also nail a protective calm over your doorway. You hang dried rosemary and wormwood in the rafters. You don't whistle after dark, and you always cross yourself when the wolves howl. There's a strange comfort in the rituals, even the gloomy ones. You know when to bow, when to stand, when to say amen. It's a rhythm, something to hold on to while the world keeps shifting under your feet. And even when the words feel empty, they still sound like structure. Some nights call, when the fear creeps in and sleep won't come, you slip away from the cottage, down the icy path, past the frozen well and the sagging fences, and duck into the church. It's never locked. The priest says that God's house should never be closed, though you suspect it's also because the door warped in the last storm and won't latch properly. Inside it's always cold but somehow still warmer than outside. You sit in the back, wrapped in your cloak, staring at the flickering altar. Sometimes you pray, sometimes you just sit, breathe, listen. There's a silence in the church that feels different from the silence in your cottage. Less sad, more held. One of your neighbours says he hears voices in the church walls at night. Whispers. You think he just drinks too much ale, but sometimes, when the wind pushes through the cracks just right, it does sound like someone singing. Not clearly, just beneath the edge of hearing. There's always debate, of course. About why the winter's so harsh. About whether the sickness is punishment or misfortune. About whether the bells are a sign or just tradition. Your uncle swears we're being punished for letting the tinker sleep indoors. Your cousin says it's because no one fasted on St. Wilfrid's Day. Your grandmother just grumbles that people have been dying every winter since before we had names for it. And still the bells ring. Later that week, another set, 4 tolls. This time it's Old Ida. She was half frozen already. She'd stopped speaking days ago. They found her curled in her chair by the fire, smiling faintly, like she'd just remembered something from long ago. At her funeral, the priest says she's with God now. Everyone nods. You wonder if that's true, or if she's just free, from the cold, the coughing, the endless scraping of days. After the service, you stand by her grave with the others, boots sinking into slush, and you stare at the freshly packed snow piled over her body. The wind picks up, the trees groan. Somewhere in the distance, the wolf howl returns, low and slow. You cross yourself. You're not sure why, but it feels right. Back home, the fire crackles. Your family is gathered close. You can still hear the echo of the bells in your chest. You survived another day, but you've lost another name. The list grows shorter, and the winter grows longer. You don't want to leave the village in winter. No one does. The roads, if you can still call them that, are buried in snow and lined with ice-slick ditches just waiting for a careless foot. The paths are narrow, slippery, and suspiciously quiet. But sometimes you have no choice. A cow goes into labour and the healer is 2 hills over. A message must reach the manor. Someone dies, and the priest has to carry word to the monastery for burial records. Or maybe you're just desperate. For salt, for medicine, for hope. And so you go. You always travel in pairs. Alone is suicide. The cold can make you lose direction even when you're walking a route you've taken 100 times. Snow smooths out landmarks, turns trees into ghosts, makes the familiar seem foreign. You could step off the road by an inch and end up wandering in circles until your legs give out. And then there's the matter of who or what you might meet along the way. Today it's you and your cousin Brenna heading out with a sled to fetch more firewood from a glade an hour away. You've been to that grove dozens of times, but in winter it feels like another country. You bundle up in every layer you own, your feet wrapped in rags and your face wrapped in wool, and you clutch a crude walking stick like it's going to fight the cold off for you. The wind is worse beyond the village. It slices through your cloak like a knife, howling between the trees, screaming over open fields. The snow crunches under your boots, sharp and dreek, the kind that sounds like bones breaking. You keep your eyes down, one step in front of the other, the rope of the sled biting into your glove as you drag it behind you. You pass the place where the fence used to be. The posts are gone now, buried deep or rotted through. Someone's glove lies frozen to a tree stump, curled as if it still holds something. You say nothing, just keep walking. One hard historical fact. In winter, travel was not just difficult, it was dangerous in the extreme. With limited daylight, treacherous conditions, and the constant threat of bandits or wild animals, most medieval peasants stayed put unless necessity forced them to move. Roads weren't cleared, maps weren't helpful, and getting lost meant death. Simple as that. As you walk, Brenna tells you a story. She always does. Something about a traveller who got turned around in the snow and ended up wandering into a fey village, feasting with them for what felt like one night. When he returned, 100 years had passed. You ask her if that's what she's hoping for. She says only if they serve hot soup. There's an eerie beauty to it all. The forest is silent but alive. The trees groan under the weight of snow, bending like they're whispering to each other. Icicles hang from the branches like the teeth of giants. You stop once, just to listen, and the silence feels thick, almost holy. Then you hear something move, just a crunch, probably a squirrel, maybe a fox, but neither of you say anything for a while. The glade when you reach it is frozen over. The wood is buried, but you know where to dig. You start to pile branches onto the sled, checking each one for rot. Your hands are so cold you can't feel your fingers, but you keep moving, keep working. The trick isn't to stay warm, it's to stay busy. Then on the way back you see the tracks. They cross the path at an angle, deep, deliberate, not hooves, not claws, boots, human, and fresh. You look at Brenna. She's already dropped her end of the sled. There shouldn't be anyone else out here. You follow the tracks for a few steps. They curve off into the woods, then vanish where the snow drifts deeper. You don't call out. You don't want an answer. You just glance at each other and turn back toward the village, picking up your pace. Here's a fringe belief that creeps in during winters like this, that not all travellers are alive. Some of them, they say, are spirits that walk the roads repeating their final journey. Some are fey, appearing human until you speak to them and then they smile with too many teeth. And some are something else entirely, older than stories, drawn to movement in the snow like wolves to blood. You once heard of a peddler who went missing a dozen years ago, disappeared between two villages during a storm. They found his sled 6 months later, perfectly intact but frozen in a tree like it had grown there. No one talks about it anymore, but the tree's still there, you've seen it. Closer to home, you hear bells, not church bells, smaller, a single jingle, like the kind worn on a horse's bridle or stitched to a performer's cloak. You stop, hold your breath, strain to hear. Nothing, just the wind. Brenna says, "Let's walk faster, but walk faster." You don't argue. When you finally see the rooftops of the village again, you let out a breath you didn't realise you were holding. You walk faster, not quite running, but not strolling either. The sled drags behind you, creaking under the weight of frozen wood and undead fear. You make it home before sunset, barely. The animals are quiet. The children are quiet. The whole house feels like it's waiting for something to arrive. That night, your uncle returns from the next village over. His face is pale. His lips are cracked. He says he passed a man on the road. Tall, wrapped in black. No face visible. The man said nothing, just raised a hand and pointed toward the woods. Your uncle didn't follow the direction. He just walked faster. There's debate at the hearth about whether he imagined it. Your grandmother says spirits walk more freely when the snow is deep. The priest says God tests us with shadows. The healer says it was probably just a traveller from the next village. But no one goes out the next day, not even to the well. And the tracks in the woods? They're gone. The snow covered them overnight, as if nothing ever walked there at all. The fire burns low and the night stretches long. So someone always says it. Let's tell a story. It's never a question, more like a ritual, a rite as old as winter itself. The kind of tradition that crawled out of some primal part of you, back when people still slept in caves and kept saber-toothed skulls for decoration. The chores are done, the snow's climbing the window, and there's nothing left to do but wait out the darkness. So yes, a story. You all settle in, the family, the animals, the odd guest or two, drawing close like moths to the only glow left in the world. There's logs snap, the pig snores, and the candle on the table flickers as the first voice begins. You never know which story will come out first. Sometimes it's the old favourites, the ones you could recite with your eyes closed. Sometimes it's something new, something wild that spills out of someone's mouth before they even know they're saying it. Tonight your cousin begins. Her voice is low, scratchy, dramatic. Once, in a village swallowed by snow... Yes, perfect. The tale begins, and so do the gestures. Fingers swoop like bats as she describes the white bears with eyes like lanterns. Her face contorts as she speaks of the Ice Witch, who kidnapped children and turned their hearts to icicles. Everyone leans in. Even the goat stops chewing for a moment. You've heard this one before, but it doesn't matter. The telling is half the magic, because the story isn't just a distraction, It's a spell. It lifts you out of the cottage and into a world of forests that whisper your name, rivers that sing, and skies full of glowing beasts. In the story, you're warm, fed, powerful. In the story, you win, and that counts for something. A historical fact to whisper into the darkness. Storytelling was central to life in medieval villages, especially during winter. Without books, television, or literally anything else to pass the time, oral storytelling filled the void. It was entertainment, history, gossip, and therapy. The stories weren't just about knights and saints, they were about you, your neighbour who may or may not be a witch, the man who wandered into the woods and came back different, the ghost in the well that drinks moonlight, and of course the saints. So many saints. Your grandmother loves those ones, especially the gory bits. Saint Agnes walking barefoot through snow with fire in her eyes. Saint Cuthbert, who bathed in freezing water while sea otters warmed his feet. You're not sure how that one works. Saint Sebastian, full of arrows and still not shutting up. You listen, half fascinated, half horrified. The moral of every story seems to be, don't mess with saints. But honestly, the ghost stories are better. Everyone has one. A cousin who saw a pale figure on the roof, a friend who heard knocking from under the floorboards, a baby who stopped crying for an entire night. No reason, just silence. The kind that feels wrong, too still. Your uncle swears up and down he once followed his own shadow into the woods, says it stepped out of sync with him, just once, then darted behind a tree. When he tried to find it, he got lost for hours, came back shivering and babbling about voices in the snow. No one believes him, but everyone remembers the day he returned. Face pale, boots missing, lips blue. There's a debate every winter about whether you should even tell ghost stories during the cold months. Some say it draws the wrong kind of attention, that stories are invitations, that if you speak their names, they hear you. Others say that's exactly why you should tell them, to keep the stories where you can see them, to remind the dark that you're not afraid. You sit somewhere in the middle, you tell the stories, but you always toss a pinch of salt in the fire when you're done, just in case. Tonight the mood is shifting. The first story was whimsical, the second a little darker. Now, it's your father's turn, and his tales always carry a weight. He leans forward, voice low, eyes glinting with reflection. He talks about the man who walks between villages, wearing a face stitched from the skins of the lost, who offers warmth in the storm, just a little firelight in the trees, but if you step off the path to find it, you're never seen again. You stare at the hearth as he speaks, heart ticking faster. You know the path he's talking about. You walked it just last week. The candle sputters. Everyone flinches. Your father smiles. No one claps at the end of the tale. That's not how it works. You just sit in silence for a moment, letting the cold creep back in, letting the story hang in the air like fog. Then someone, probably your sister, says, "Well, that was cheerful," and everyone laughs too loudly. It helps. You pull your blanket tighter and lean against the rough wall of the cottage. The fire hisses, the shadows return to their places, and then someone clears their throat. "Want to hear what the tinker told me?" "Yes, you do, because of course he had a story. He said he met a woman who never walked, only floated above the ground, trailing frost where she passed. He said he once bartered with a fox who wore a silver ring on its paw. He said that deep in the woods there's a tree with red sap that sings lullabies if you bleed near it. Everyone wants to believe. Not that it's all true, just that some of it might be. That the world is still strange and not just cruel. That the dark is full of stories, not just endings. One quirky old belief in your village is that a fire listens, that it remembers the stories told around it. And if you treat it well, feed it, thank it, tell it the good tales, it'll protect you. Burn brighter, keep the shadows at bay. But if you neglect it, it forgets your name. So before bed, you whisper a small story to the flame. Not long, just a scrap. A memory of sunlight on a haystack. Of laughter in the field. Of warmth that didn't come from wood. The fire flares just a little. The goat farts, and the spell breaks. Sleep comes not like a blanket, but like a story you've heard 1,000 times. The kind where you already know the ending, but you still want to hear it again. Because you made it through another night. And the story's not over yet. It starts with a tingle, a dull ache at the edge of your toes as if they've been pinched too hard for too long. Then comes the burning, needle-like jabs that make you grit your teeth and stamp your feet, praying the pain will wake them back up. You rub them, pound them, wrap them in old cloth, but nothing helps. They're turning purple now, black at the tips, and you know what that means, even if no one wants to say it out loud. Frostbite. The healer says it gently, she always does. Her voice is soft, like straw brushing skin, but the news lands like an axe. Your sister stares down at her foot. The colour wrong and the skin shiny in a way that looks almost fake, like wax. She says she can still feel it, but you both know that's a lie. That toe hasn't twitched in days. It's not just her. Your uncle's fingers are starting to go too. He dropped a bucket by the well last week and fished it out barehanded. By the time he got back inside, his skin looked boiled. He hasn't complained, but you saw him bite through a leather strap yesterday just to keep from screaming. The cold doesn't just punish, it invades. Finds your weakest parts, extremities first, and claims them. A toe here, a finger there, lips that crack so deeply they bleed when you smile. Noses that feel like brittle parchment. Every exposed inch is a target, and no matter how tightly you wrap yourself, it finds its way in. That's where the remedies come in. Some are practical. You soak your limbs in lukewarm water, not to hot. Hot makes it worse. You rub with cloth gently, even when every instinct tells you to slap feeling back in. You try to keep moving, keep blood flowing, though walking on dying toes is agony. You rotate the sick near the fire like loaves of bread, hoping some warmth will stick. But then there are the other remedies. Your grandmother swears by goose fat. Slather it on thick and wrap the limb in muslin. She once claimed it saved her cousin's nose, though nobody remembers the cousin, or whether she still had a nose when she died. Your neighbour uses onions, sliced thick and laid on the skin like a bandage, followed by a poultice of garlic and vinegar. The house smells like a cursed stew, but he insists it works. You tried it once. Your foot burned like it was being cooked from the inside out, and the goat wouldn't stop licking you. One fringe method making the rounds this winter. Urine, human or animal. Your aunt says it's sterile and warming. Your cousin tried it in desperation. Now no one sits next to her. The frostbite didn't improve, but her pride froze clean off. You hear whispers of more extreme measures. Cutting, cauterizing, biting the tips off before the rot sets in. The blacksmith supposedly did that into his own toe, with a heated chisel 2 years ago. Still walks, limping, but are proud. You've never confirmed it. No one wants to see a hard historical truth. Frostbite was often fatal in the medieval world, not because the cold killed, but because infection did. Once the flesh started to die, gangrene followed, and with no antibiotics, amputation was the only hope. If you were lucky, the local barber had a steady hand and a hot iron. If not, well, you'd better make peace with the gods. All of them. Your family avoids that talk. No one wants to bring out the blade. Not yet. Instead, you rely on hope and fire, and whatever unholy mixture the healer brews up in her cracked clay pots. One of them smells like fish and mint. Another hisses when poured. You don't ask questions. You just rub it on and pretend it's helping. There's debate in the village about whether frostbite is a punishment or a curse. The priest says it's nature's justice. Stay inside and you'll stay safe. Easy for him to say, wrapped in furs donated by wealthier parishes. The healer insists it's imbalance. Too much cold, not enough blood. She prescribes hot drinks, slow walks, wool stuffed into every fold of your clothing. The old shepherd says it's ghosts nibbling at your feet. They start with toes, he mumbles, then move up the spine. You laugh, but you also started sleeping with garlic under your pillow, just in case. The mental toll is worse than the physical. You start obsessing over your toes, your fingers. Is this one numb? Has that one darkened? You check them constantly, peeling off layers to inspect your skin like a gardener hunting rot. You dream of losing your hands, of them crumbling like old bread. You wake up clutching them, breathing into your palms, praying they still belong to you. Today your sister's toe turned black. Really black, not just bruised, like charcoal. She didn't cry, just stared at it, said, "I don't think it's mine anymore." That's what scared you most, how calm she was. Like the cold had already claimed part of her soul and she was just waiting for it to finish the job. You tried to make her laugh. You told her she could sell it to the tinker. He trades in unusual goods, you said. Toe could buy a dozen needles, she smiled thinly. Said she'd want interest. Tonight you rub your own feet again, sitting by the fire, feeling for pain for anything. The goat, ever oblivious, climbs into your lap, knocking your cup over. Warm ale spills across your shins. You hiss, then freeze. Heat. You feel it. Not just numbness or tingling, but heat. Actual stinging, painful heat. You could cry with relief, because in winter, pain is a mercy. Pain means you're still here. You look over at your sister. She's asleep. One foot propped near the fire, bandaged and shiny with goose fat. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, if that toe will make it, if the healer will nod that slow, final nod that says, prepare the blade. But for now, she's breathing. You're warm. And the wind outside sounds more like a lullaby than a warning. That's enough for tonight. It creeps in sometime after midwinter, this heavier, wet kind of sadness that clings to everything like a damp wool cloak. The days remain short, the nights still endless, but there's no longer any novelty in them. No holiday, no feast, no tinker with strange stories, no mysterious howls to stir your fear. Just repetition. Grey skies, slush. Cold that's more annoying than terrifying now. And this feeling, this ache, that even when your body isn't cold, something else deep inside you still is. You've entered what the village calls the slow dark. Not poetic, not ominous. Just a phrase that says exactly what it means. Everything slows. The mood, the talk, the spark that you wake up and wonder what day it is. You go to sleep not caring if you ever find out. The bread still bakes. The pottage still simmers. The fire still burns. But you no longer look forward to any of it. Even Butter the pig stops trying to steal things and just lies there, listless, blinking slowly like someone hung over from nothing at all. You're not seeing? Not exactly. You're not weeping or sighing or taking long walks to think. You're just dull, frayed, like a knife that's lost its edge. You speak in half sentences. You laugh at things without knowing why. You cry in your sleep and wake up without remembering the dream. This happens to everyone. Your cousin hasn't left her bed in 3 days. She says she's conserving warmth, but you've seen her just lying there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, like it's asking her questions she doesn't want to answer. Your uncle, usually the loudest man in the room, hasn't told a single joke in a week. Your sister stopped singing. Your father started talking to the fire again. You know better than to call it laziness. This isn't a matter of willpower. This is the winter inside you, not the one outside. This is what happens when your body has run out of sunshine, your spirit has run out of song, and your heart has forgotten what colour looks like. This is medieval depression. And nobody's invented a word for it yet. Back then they called it melancholy. The old healers said it was caused by an imbalance of black bile, one of the 4 humours. Too much of it, and the body slumps, the eyes dim, the thoughts get stuck in a loop of despair. The prescribed treatment: herbs, wine, prayer, a slap to the face if needed. You've seen that happen. Sometimes it works. The priest, when he notices the heaviness creeping in, calls for mass more often. We must lift our souls, he says, with an urgency that suggests his own might be sagging. His sermons get louder, stranger. He tells stories about saints who lived inside walls for 40 years and emerged singing. You try to imagine yourself bricked into a wall and laugh, which earns you a smack on the back of the head from your mother. Your grandmother, more practical, swears by movement. Walk, even if you've got nowhere to go, she says. Stomp the sadness out of your feet. So you do. You go outside, you stomp in the snow, you climb the hill, just to see if the sky has changed. It hasn't. But you felt the wind on your face and remembered what it's like to hurt in a way that proves you're alive. There's a debate this time of year about whether or not to keep track of days. Some villagers obsessively mark time, carving little notches into beams, into the side of the bread oven, into their own belts. Only 6 weeks till thaw, they whisper, like it's a spell. Others ignore it entirely. Time only hurts when you look too closely. You've chosen the middle path. You let your grandmother tell you when it's Sunday and otherwise stop counting. One strange belief still floats around the village, that melancholy is a spirit, a pale draping figure that slips through cracks in the door and settles over your shoulders like a shawl. It whispers reminders of old failures, lost loves, missing friends. It smells like cold ashes and wilted herbs. And if it stays too long, it starts to become part of you. The healer says that's why she smudges wormwood around the windows every February. Keeps the shawl spirit out, she mutters, waving smoke like it owes her money. You don't know what to believe. But when your sister started weeping during dinner, for no reason at all, you placed dried lavender under her pillow. And when your uncle didn't speak for 2 days straight, you sat next to him and hummed a song you didn't know you remembered. He didn't look at you, but he tapped his finger against the table in rhythm. It's small things now. That's how you survive? A bite of bread with actual flavour. A patch of sun on the cottage floor, even if it lasts just a minute. A bird call, someone slipping a carved trinket into your hand with a wink. You start to live for moments, not days, smiles, not promises, and when you can't feel anything at all, you go outside barefoot for a second. The cold hurts like knives, it's awful, but it breaks the numbness. And when you stumble back in, howling and hopping on one foot, someone always laughs. That helps too. Tonight the fire burns low again, but someone's made a song up. A dumb one. About a cow who wants to be a queen. It doesn't even rhyme. Everyone joins in anyway. Someone's banging a spoon on a pot. Butter tries to sing too. It's chaos. Beautiful, stupid, warm chaos. And for the first time in days, you feel like you're in your body again. You wrap the blanket tighter around your shoulders. You press your feet against your sisters. You smile when someone passes you a slice of bread with a smear of leftover lard and pretends it's a delicacy. Maybe it is. And for now, that's enough. The darkness hasn't won yet. It starts with a sound. A low groan, barely audible over the usual background noise of crackling fire and grumbling stomachs. You pause, cup your hand to your ear, and wait. Nothing. Just the goat chewing something she shouldn't, the pig letting out a dreamy snort, your father muttering to the fire again like it owes him money. You go back to your task, patching a hole in your sock using a chicken feather, a bent nail, and the last of your patience. Then it happens again, louder this time. A deep creak followed by a sharp, wet snap like a branch breaking under ice. But this sound didn't come from outside, it came from above. You look up. The ceiling sags in one corner. Only slightly, but enough to make your heart beat a little faster. There's snow on the roof, yes, and it's been piling up for weeks, but the roof's held before. It's held every year. Mostly. You stare at the spot, frown, and do what anyone with limited options and zero tools does. You ignore it and hope it fixes itself. It doesn't. By the next morning, the sag is worse. The beams are groaning now, stretching and bending like old bones about to snap. Everyone notices. No one wants to talk about it. Your uncle walks through the house and refuses to look up. Your grandmother mutters something about tempting fate. Your cousin suggests poking it with a stick, and your mother threatens to poke him with a stick. You pile another log on the fire. You wait, because what else can you do? In medieval villages, roof collapses were a grim and common reality. Thatch weighed heavy with snow, wood rotted from years of use, and even a small leak could expand into disaster. With no insulation, no supports beyond simple beams and mud, and no one coming to rescue you, a single heavy storm could literally bring the house down. And when it did, people didn't always make it out. Outside, it snows again. Thick, heavy flakes that fall straight down like they mean business. The roof groans in reply. The pig shifts uneasily. Even she can sense it now. The goat, less helpful, climbs onto the woodpile to get a better view. That evening, your father climbs into the rafters to try and knock some of the snow down. He wraps himself in rope tied to the support beam like he's about to wrestle a bear. You all watch as he jams a pitchfork into the thatch and curses with increasing creativity. Snow pours through in little streams. One clump falls directly on his face. He screams. The goat cheers. It helps a little, but not enough. The next day it happens. Not all at once, just a section. A quiet pop, then a tearing, a splintering crack as the corner of the roof gives out and a wall of snow crashes through. It hits the floor with the weight of a monster, slamming it into the firewood pile and sending kindling flying across the room. Butter the pig screams like she's being murdered and immediately hides under the bench. Your brother yells. Your grandmother throws a ladle at the hole. Why? Who knows? No one's hurt, not really. A bruised arm, a twisted ankle, a near heart attack. But the damage is done. The roof's open to the sky now, cold air rushing in like an angry guest, snow dusting the table, the floor, the bedding. It feels like the house has been pierced. Like winter finally made its move. Everyone moves fast by frozen standards. You shovel the snow out with anything you can find. Buckets, bowls, your hands. You haul broken beams away while someone drags a canvas tarp from the shed. It's not waterproof, it smells like mildew. It's full of holes, but it's better than open sky. You work in sealants. No one complains, no one has the energy. You just move because you know if you stop you'll think about how close it was, about how easily the whole thing could have come down on your sister, or the baby, or you. By nightfall the hole is patched. Badly. But patched. The room still feels exposed. The wind finds new paths to slither in. Snow still dusts the corners, but you're alive, and the fire is still burning. That's the new standard for success. One fringe village belief comes to mind, maybe one you haven't thought of since you were small. That when the roof collapses, it means the house spirit has left. That the guardian of the home has turned its back on you. Your grandmother swears she saw a bird fly out through the gap as the thatch fell. A black one. Maybe a crow, maybe something else. You don't say anything. But later, when no one's looking, you tuck a few sprigs of thyme and salt into the corners of the patched roof, just in case the spirit is watching, just in case it decides to come back. There's debate around the fire that night about what caused the collapse. Your uncle blames the goat. The goat blames gravity. The priest, when he stops by the next morning to check in, calls it a trial of faith. Your mother just sighs and goes back to mending the ripped cloak she was working on before the ceiling decided to enter the conversation. You sit near the fire, watching the candle flicker under the drafty patch above. It's colder now, your fingers ache, your feet feel like they're wrapped in stone. But the worst part isn't the cold, it's the knowledge that no one's coming to help. There are no emergency services, no builders with ladders, no insurance. It's just you. And the roof you built yourselves, that failed anyway. But you survived. So you do what medieval villagers always did, you adjust. You move your bedding away from the weak corner. You pile snow against the outer wall for insulation. You hang a pot from a new hook and call it a redesign. You laugh weakly when your father refers to the gaping hole as our new skylight. And you sleep that night under the repaired roof, wrapped in every blanket you own, with a log for a pillow and your hands curled beneath your chin. The cold presses down from above. The wind still moans through the boards, but your sister hums softly beside you. And the pig has settled into a suspiciously content snore. And the roof, what's left of it, holds for now. You wake to a drip. Just one at first. A soft plink in the bucket near the fire where snowmelt usually gathers. You blink, disoriented, wrapped in your nest of wool and straw, unsure whether it's a dream or something real, until it happens again. Plink. You sit up slowly, neck stiff, limbs sluggish. And there it is, a faint shimmer of moisture running down the inside of the patched roof. Catching the early light. Something is different. You feel it before you see it. The air isn't quite as sharp. Your breath clouds less. The cold still lingers in your bones, sure, but it's no longer pressing down like it's trying to squeeze the life out of you. There's a softness to it now, a subtle shift. You slip out from under the blankets and press your palm against the wall. It's still cold, but it's not biting. Could it be? You tug open the warped wooden shutter and peer out. Snow still covers the ground, crusted and uneven, but something's happening to the edges. It's melting, just a little. The eaves drip. The thatch glistens. A black patch of earth peeks through near the pig pen, like the land itself is taking a breath. The sky, while still grey, is lighter somehow, less angry. Spring is not here, but it's closer. You bolt for the hearth. No shoes, no care. You shout to your mother, to your siblings, to anyone listening, it's dripping, and that's all it takes. Everyone knows what you mean. In this house, in this village, a drip means change. A drip means hope. Soon the whole cottage stirs. The goat headbutts the door. The pig snorts and knocks over a pail. Your father lets out a loud, sleepy laugh, the first one in weeks. Your grandmother, still wrapped in 3 shawls, sits up and mutters, "Careful. A trickle of warmth is how winter tests your gullibility." But even she can't stop smiling. There's a saying in the village, winter breaks before it bends, meaning the first signs of relief often come after the harshest stretch. You don't let your guard down yet. You know better. The snow will fall again. It always does. The worst storm often arrives after the first thaw, angry and spiteful like a king being dethroned. But this morning, it feels like a truce. The animals feel it too. The chickens, who've spent weeks barely moving, are scratching half-heartedly at the packed dirt. The sheep are bleating again, not in panic, but in hunger, in life. The calf takes a few clumsy steps and doesn't immediately fall over. Even Brona, the cow, lifts her head and lets out a noise that might actually be a moo instead of a sigh. There's still a mountain of problems. The roof still leaks, the hay is still low, the baby still has a cough. But when the air lightens, everything does. The slowness that's been choking you for weeks lifts slightly. You move faster, talk more, think forward. Your cousin finds an old jar of berry preserves and insists on sharing it like it's a feast. You eat it slowly, reverently, as if fruit might never grow again. It's too sweet, a little fermented, and absolutely perfect. You lick the spoon, then the inside of the jar, then you pass it around. It's in that moment, all of you laughing and sticky-fingered and sitting on the damp floorboards, that you notice it. A fly, just one, tiny, bumbling, bouncing against the window pane like it can't quite believe it's alive. Your sister points, everyone stares. "Where did he come from?" your uncle asks, voice low as if the fly's a holy relic. The debate begins. Was it hiding in the straw, born in the snowmelt, carried in on someone's cloak like a stowaway of spring? No one knows. But the sight of that little insect, clumsy and alive and so completely not winter, cracks something open in you. One historical fact: flies, bugs, and early blooming weeds were used as markers by medieval villagers to judge the timing of the seasons. Some believe the first insect was a spirit scout, sent ahead by the spring goddess Asikastor, nature itself, to test the ground and see if the land was ready. There were even superstitions that killing the first fly of the season would doom you to a bad harvest. So you don't touch it. You give it a name instead: Sir Bumbles. The melt begins slowly. The snow doesn't vanish, it shrinks, curling in on itself, revealing muddy patches and twisted grass, like old secrets finally uncovered. Icicles drip all day, puddles form. The well, long frozen over, stirs and burps and finally spits out water that doesn't have to be cracked through, first. But the melt brings its own dangers. The path to the barn becomes a mud pit. The snow, once solid, turns to slush that collapses underfoot without warning. You nearly lose your boot in a hole near the fence. Your father goes through the ice near the stream up to his knee and comes back swearing that the water tried to bite him. Then there's the smell. No one talks about it, but you all smell it. Rot, damp, spoiled grain. The leftovers of winter, thawed and sour. Somewhere beneath the chicken coop something didn't survive. Butter sniffs the air, then trots off like she's seen worse, which, to be fair, she probably has. You begin the big inspection, a spring ritual, whether it's spring or not. You poke at the walls, you press your fingers into the thatch, you check for mould, for cracks, for dead mice in mirrored and dark corners. Some repairs are easy, some are soul-crushing, but you make a list in your head. You assign tasks, and for the first time in months you feel active, not just reactive. There's a small ceremony that evening, not formal, just you and your family stepping outside one by one to stand in the fading light. No coats, just for a minute, faces turned up, hands bare. The snow still reflects the dusk, but the air no longer bites. Your breath still clouds, but only faintly. And the birds, you hear them. Just one at first, a short trill carried by wind, then another, then silence, then again. They're testing the air too. You go to bed wrapped in the usual layers. The roof still creaks. The pig still snores. But you lie there thinking about puddles, about flies, about the wet, smelly promise that this awful season is not eternal. It's not over. Not yet. But for the first time in what feels like forever, you believe it might be ending. And then, just like that, winter throws a tantrum. You wake to the sound of wind howling like a wounded beast, dragging its claws across the roof. The sky outside is white. Not gentle snow, not a quiet flurry, but a blinding, furious wall of ice slicing sideways across the village. Everything groans, the trees, the beams, even your father when he tries to sit up. Your sister mumbles something about betrayal. You don't disagree, you'd been tricked. Fooled by the melt, seduced by the dripping eaves and hopeful puddles. You named a fly, for heaven's sake. You celebrated. You tasted jam, and winter saw it, and laughed. Now it's back with a vengeance. This storm isn't soft and heavy like midwinter snow. It's sharp, angry, the kind of cold that doesn't just sneak under your clothes, it jumps down your throat and sets up camp in your lungs. You open the shutter for a second and nearly lose your hand to the wind. The snow is horizontal, the trees are blurred silhouettes. Visibility is about 3 goats long, and Butter refuses to go outside, which is always a bad sign. Inside, you try to act normal. You go through the motions, stir the fire, check the animals, organise the straw pile like you're doing more for fun. But the tension is thick. It presses down from the rafters like a second roof. Everyone moves slower, talks quieter. The storm makes the whole house feel like a trap. The roof patch from the last collapse starts leaking immediately. The snow forces its way in through the old seams, seeping under the tarped corner and dripping into bowls that quickly fill. You scramble to add more buckets, more rags. You jam moss into the gaps with frozen fingers. It's all panic and patches now. You're not even trying to win, just delay the loss. The animals are miserable. The goat screams non-stop, then sits dramatically in the corner like she's given up on life. Brona kicks over her water bucket, then acts offended when no one refills it. The chickens huddle in a tight, furious ball. The pig, who usually hogs the warmest spot by the hearth, is shivering under the table. Even Butter's snout has frost on it. You toss her a blanket and pretend not to notice when she wraps herself in it like royalty. Your father says the last time it stormed this late in the season, 2 people were buried alive in their own homes. He tells you this while casually checking the ceiling like that's not going to keep you up all night. One historical fact, these surprise late winter storms were some of the most feared. In a time without forecasts or warnings, they struck suddenly and violently, often undoing weeks of slow recovery. They could collapse structures already weakened, kill livestock already starving, and ruin supplies too fragile to survive another freeze. For people already running on empty, it was the final test. Sometimes they passed, sometimes not. By midday, the storm shows no signs of slowing. The sky is still white, the wind still shrieking. The fire struggles against the draft, and for the first time in weeks, you start to wonder if it'll go out. That scares you more than anything. You feed it desperately. Scraps of wood, dry reeds, a basket that used to hold potatoes. The heat is weak, but it's still there, still burning. There's a long moment just after sunset when everyone falls silent. You're all sitting near the fire, knees to chests, eyes half closed, and the storm is just screaming. It feels like it's trying to get in, like it's alive and furious that you've made it this far. Your little house feels like a ship lost in some Arctic sea, and the snow is waves crashing against it. There's no music, no stories, just the crackling fire and the occasional cough. And then, from the rafters, a crack. You all flinch, the goat screams, the pig farts. A cloud of dust falls from above, and your uncle leaps to his feet, staring upward like he expects the roof to drop a tree on his head. But nothing comes, just the storm pressing harder. The debate starts quietly. Should we move? Should we sleep under the table, near the wall, outside, though? Outside? Someone hisses. Are you mad? There are trees, strong ones. Could build a lean-to. In the middle of a blizzard. Better than getting buried in our sleep. No, it isn't. You know they won't go. Not really. It's just the fear talking, the exhaustion. The storm wears on the mind as much as the body. But you still make adjustments. Everyone sleeps fully clothed, boots on, cloaks nearby. Someone keeps watch, just in case you get the second shift. The house is quiet now, the others dozing in a tangled, snoring pile of limbs and blankets. The wind still howls, but your ears are used to it. You sit by the fire, feeding it carefully, piece by piece. You whisper to it again. Stories, promises, gratitude. Just enough to keep it company. One old belief says that fire spirits get angry when storms rage, because they feel challenged. You can't decide if that's ridiculous or beautiful. Maybe both. Sometime near dawn, the wind changes. You hear it. Less sharp. Less screaming. It starts to lose its rhythm, stuttering and staggering like it's finally run out of fury. The snow still falls, but softer now. More like the old midwinter kind, gentle, tired, thick. You crack open the shutter and look outside. And there it is. Stillness. Just a little. Just enough. The world is white again, silent. But the wind is gone, and the air has a weight that feels like aftermath. Later, when everyone wakes, you all step outside, slowly, carefully. The snow is high, waist-deep in some places, but the light has changed. It's brighter. Not warm yet, but open. The clouds are moving. You can see the shape of the sun behind them. Your father turns in a slow circle and says, "That was the last one." You don't ask how he knows. You just believe him. Not because it's true, but because it needs to be. Inside, the fire still burns, the roof still holds, and your family, your strange, frozen, stubborn little family, is still here. You're not sure when it changes from hope to certainty. One morning you open the door and there's mud. Not slush, not ice, mud, soft, sticky, wet earth that grabs your boots like it's been waiting months for the privilege. It squelches underfoot, sucking at your soles with every step, and it smells strange, sour, glorious, like rot and birth and everything that's been sleeping finally starting to wake up. It's ugly, disgusting, really. But you grin like a fool and stomp straight through it. Winter is losing. There's still snow on the roofs, but it's running in rivulets now, dripping like sweat from a tired beast. The icicles fall on their own, long shards that shatter dramatically in the mud like they've given up. The barn doors creak open easier. The woodpile no longer weeps when you touch it. And somewhere in the trees, faint and tentative, a bird sings two perfect notes. You don't know the species. Doesn't matter. You want to marry that bird. Inside the house, the shift is subtle. The fire still burns, but you don't huddle around it anymore. You sit a little farther back. You let the door hang open while you work. Your breath doesn't fog quite so dramatically. Your toes, they wiggle without complaint. The mood lifts inch by inch. Your cousin starts humming again. Your sister washes her hair. Your uncle trims his beard, which had started to resemble something growing in a cursed forest. Even Butter the pig becomes sprightly, trotting through the muck like she's just been appointed mayor, but spring when it finally arrives is no polished parade. It's not flowers and sunbeams and woodland creatures holding hands. It's mess, chaos, exploding mud, mould on everything, the smell of mildew from boots that haven't fully dried in 4 months, wet hay, thawed rat carcass, piles of rotting snow exposing things you forgot even existed, bent tools, broken baskets, a child's mitten stiff with ice. One old villager once said, "Spring's not born, it vomits its way into the world." And you can't help but agree, it's not beautiful, not yet, but it's alive, and right now that's better than beauty. You join in the first great clean, not because you want to, because it's tradition. Every surface has to be swept, every blanket aired. The animals get checked, rechecked, and half scolded for surviving with such poor hygiene. You scrub soot off the walls, knock ice from the eaves, dump buckets of foul water into the now thawing ditch. Your hands are raw by the end of it, your nose running, your patience worn thin. But when you hang your cloak outside and it dries in a single day, you nearly cry from joy. You find things too, bits of life hidden by snow. An old carving under the chicken coop, a boot no one remembers owning, the shovel you gave up on weeks ago, and buried near the barn in the frozen mud, a small packet of herbs you'd forgotten about, wrapped in linen, tied with red thread, a protection charm, you leave it where it is. One historical fact. The arrival of spring in medieval villages was marked not by celebration, but by frantic work. Livestock had to be reconditioned, tools repaired, fields prepped, thatching retied, supplies restocked if anything was left. There were no vacations, just the brutal rush to undo winter's damage before it could bloom into something worse. But amid the scramble there are quiet victories. The first green thing appears, just a blade of grass poking through a patch of muck like it's unsure of the welcome. Your sister spots it and yells like she's found gold. Everyone gathers around to see. You take turns touching it. One tiny green thread, barely longer than your thumb, and yet it sends a jolt through your chest. You're not imagining it. Life is coming back. Then the crocuses bloom. You don't even know they're crocuses. Not really, someone's uncle claimed the name years ago and now it just stuck, but they're little purple miracles that grow low to the ground, defiant and smug and shockingly bright. The first flowers of the year. They arrive like smug nobles, late to the war but eager for the praise. You don't care. You pick one and tuck it behind your ear. The celebration is small, not official, just bread baked in the shape of birds, and a bit of dancing near the village green, where the snow has receded enough to pretend it's flat ground. A fiddler shows up from somewhere, probably a cousin who's just re-emerged from his winter den, and plays something fast and happy. You all dance, awkwardly, badly, with sore joints and muddy boots, but you dance. The priest calls for a proper blessing. "The thaw is God's mercy," he says, hands raised to the grey sky. Your grandmother mutters that the thaw is nature's stubbornness and pours salt water on the garden rows to chase out the spirits of cold. The healer sprinkles dried petals across the doorstep and tells everyone to step over them with their right foot first. Everyone does. One fringe belief this time of year: if you can spot the first butterfly, you're allowed one secret wish. Your brother finds one perched on a bucket and immediately claims it. No one asks what he wished for, but later that day, he finds a whole egg tucked beneath a beam in the chicken coop. First in weeks, his eyes go wide like he just witnessed magic. Maybe he did. You eat that egg like it's treasure. Boiled, sliced, split among 6 people, each with your bite savoured like it's laced with honey. You can't believe you ever thought of eggs as ordinary. You vow never to take them for granted again. You lie on your back in the half-dry grass near the field. The sun pale but warm enough to make your cheeks tingle. The clouds drift. A crow hops nearby, suspiciously eyeing your bread crust. You offer it a crumb, it takes it without thanks, and flies off, and you swear it winked. The world smells different now, still muddy, still mouldy, but tinged with sweetness. Sap, buds, smoke from the neighbour's fire pit where someone's already trying to cook something that smells, frankly, illegal. You laugh. Out loud. Not the small, tired laugh, but a full one. And when night falls, it's not bone-deep dark anymore. The stars return. The air is still cold, yes, but not in that cruel way. Just enough to remind you that it was cold, that you lived through it, that it's still hanging at the edge of the trees, but no longer holding your throat in its hand. You gather near the hearth one last time that night, everyone quieter than usual, satisfied, not exhausted, just, still, like your insides have finally stopped shivering. And someone says it, softly, reverently, "We made it." And this time no one laughs, because it's true. You walk past the field and your boots sink, not with the dry crunch of ice, but with the sticky squelch of thawed earth trying to hold you in place. The path, once covered in thick snow, is now a ribbon of brown, slick with mud and the remnants of old straw laid down months ago. It smells like manure, mildew, and something surprisingly sweet. Fresh grass pushing its way out of the underworld. The wind still bites, but gently now, more like a nudge than a slap. Your scarf is around your neck, not your face. Your gloves are in your pocket, forgotten. You're looking for names. You don't say it aloud, but that's what today is for. Every spring, after the first thaw, there's a walk. Not formal, not declared. Just something everyone does in their own way. You go out and see who didn't make it. Which homes are still standing. Which fields are still breathing. And which graves have shifted under the melting snow. Near the edge of the woods, you find the place where old Ida was buried. The snow's finally receded from the little hill where her grave was dug midwinter. Back when the ground was still so hard they had to warm it with boiling water. Her wooden marker, carved hastily with a dull knife, leans sideways now, half swallowed by the thaw. You kneel and straighten it, wiping mud from the name. You whisper something, not words, exactly. Just a presence, a remembering. You find 3 other graves nearby, 2 with markers. One with just a bundle of stones and a cross made from broom handles. No names, you pause at each, say nothing, but you keep count. It's important somehow that you know. Back in the village, you see the others doing the same. Your cousin walks slowly past the neighbour's cottage, the one that collapsed in February, the one they never cleared out. It's empty now. The door swings open in the wind, revealing only broken beams and soggy cloth. No one boards it up, not yet. It's too soon. The priest is out too. He doesn't say much either, just nods when he passes you. You can tell he's making his own mental list. There's no formal bell toll for the winter's dead. Not this many, not all at once, but in time he'll carve their names into the wall of the chapel, in the small back room where no one goes, except on feast days and funerals. It's not just people you grieve, it's animals, the old sheep with the limp, the kitten who vanished during the blizzard, the chicken that froze into place on the roost, still upright like a tiny feathered statue. They mattered too. You remember them, you remember everything, because winter takes so slowly, you hardly notice the full weight until it's gone. And you survived. You can say it now, really say it. You survived. Your sister's toe, she lost it. Just the one. But she walks fine and she shows it off like a war wound. The healer said it would fall off naturally, and it did. One morning while she was changing the bandage, it simply rolled away like it had somewhere better to be. She kept it in a jar, named it Little Toey. The whole house screamed. Your uncle's fingers, still attached, though 2 of them bend in strange ways now. He calls it character. The roof still leaks in 3 places, but the snow's gone from it, and your father's already patching it with a mixture of clay, straw and anger. The fire burns lower now, just enough to warm, but not enough to fight. And the animals are louder again, complaining, demanding, living. The goat head-butted a bucket across the room yesterday and broke someone's toe. That's spring for you. You start planting next week. The seed potatoes are wrinkled and sad, but they'll do. The soil is softening. The sun stays out longer each day. You find yourself standing outside at dusk, blinking up at it like you've forgotten what colour is. There's a moment in the middle of the afternoon when you stop what you're doing just for a second. You lean on your spade or your broom or whatever's in your hand, and you take a breath, and it hits you. The quiet. Not the winter silence, which is heavy and hollow, but a soft, living hush. The kind of quiet that comes when the world has started breathing again, and you're part of it. One last historical note. After the harshest winters, communities sometimes held what was called a Thanksgiving feast in early spring. Not for the harvest, not for wealth, just for survival. It wasn't grand. A loaf of bread, some pickled vegetables, maybe a scrap of meat if someone managed to trap a hare. But it was shared, it was honest, and it meant everything. So that evening you gather with your family, just a small meal, root soup, a bit of goat cheese that miraculously didn't turn green, fresh water from the stream that no longer needs breaking open. Your grandmother says a prayer, quiet and rambling and half mumbled, and halfway through she just starts crying. No one stops her. You cry too, so does your father. Even the pig looks misty-eyed. You eat in silence. Then someone sings a song, and then someone else joins in. The words are nonsense. The melody slips in and out, but you sing anyway, because you made it. You came out the other side, not unscarred, but alive. The world, thawed and filthy and reborn, is still yours. And you'll face it again when it circles back, but not tonight. Tonight you rest. The fire crackles softly now, not out of desperation, but out of habit. You're not huddled around it anymore, teeth chattering and hands stiff. You're just near it. Comfortable. The room still smells like smoke, but it's mingled now with the sharpest scent of wet earth clinging to boots left by the door. Someone left the window crack to let in the breeze. And you don't rush to close it. You sit back, you breathe, and for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you're not bracing for what's next. You're just being. It's strange, isn't it? How survival becomes so normal. You forget what peace feels like. How you learn to live by inches, by single spoonfuls of warmth, by flickers of light. And then, when spring finally comes, muddy, clumsy, half-frozen, it's not a celebration. It's a quiet exhale. A letting go of tension you didn't know you were holding in every tendon, every dream, every plan left unfinished by the frost. You go to bed tonight without checking the roof. You don't wake in the middle of the night to make sure the fire is still burning. You don't tuck your feet under the pig for warmth, though Butter tries anyway. No one whispers stories to distract themselves from the wind. The wind is just wind now, not a threat, just something that moves the branches. Your sister sleeps soundly. Her toe is gone, yes, but she's here. Your uncle snores. Your father breathes slowly, peacefully. Even the goat curled in the corner looks less annoyed than usual. You all survived. Together. And that survival will stitch itself into your bones, into your songs, into the way you greet the first snow next year. Not with fear, not exactly, but with the quiet knowledge that yes, it will be hard, and yes, you'll make it again. That's what history really is. Not kings or wars or saints with glowing halos. It's this. You, them, us. Sitting by a fire after the worst has passed, thankful for what remains, telling the story again so no one forgets. You lie back on the straw-stuffed mat, a little itchy, a little cold still, but full, not from food, from continuing. The fire glows against the low ceiling, the stars peek through the shutters, and your last thought, as your eyes drift closed, isn't of fear or hunger or cold. It's of green things. They're coming.